Chapter 1. Get out of the middle of the road, idiot. I snarl at the quivering mass of ooze. I hear whispers and shouts from heroes down the alley as they cry out for me to get away from this strange man. I ignore them and brush past the man made of slime as I head over to my locked front door. Oh, arrogant are you? The voice warbles behind me. I'll make you into modern art with this powerful stolen quirk. Your funeral, I dryly state as I fish around my pocket for my key. Finally pulling it free from its confines, I insert the metal into the lock, the crackling sound of a familiar quirk coming towards me. Lazily, I raise my hand over my shoulder and unleash my quirk. The crowd screamed in terror. What if? Life has always been a long chain of one what if after another. What if I just didn't go to work today? What if I finally asked her out? What if I skipped lunch? Well, for many people, what ifs are not major, life-changing events. Izuku Midoriya had his what-if moment when he turned 4 and he gained his quirk. He was so excited to show the little ball of fire that he had made to his parents. So happy that it grew with his excitement, compounding into an even larger flame. He kept bouncing around the apartment to show off how strong he could be. Then the curtains caught fire. His mother screamed. He panicked. He lost control. The accompanying blaze that he released as his emotions fluctuated in moments let loose an inferno that burned for over a mile. Hundreds died, his mother and father included. Despite the ruling of one of the most high-profile cases of the last century, he never felt not guilty, never thought it was an accident. In breaking development, 4.5-year-old Izuku Midoriya was found not guilty of all charges of manslaughter in this early morning session, a newscaster reported. On the charges of manslaughter, due to the fact that this was the first manifestation of the quirk and the unexpected power attributed to both the deceased Inko and Hisashi Midoriya having low recorded abilities with their own quirks, we find the defendant Izuku Midoriya not guilty, the lead juror declared, which was followed by a cacophony of noise from an angered gallery, many of whom lost family, friends, homes, and livelihoods from Izuku's outburst. The child himself just curled up in the far too large chair and cried. After the trial, without a home to go to or even a family to take care of him, Izuku was put into the foster system. But either no one wanted to take such a potential hazard into their home, or it was investigated they had the intention of abusing the child for what he had done. By luck, Mitsuki Bakugo, the friend of the late Inko and Hisashi Midoriya, had managed to gain custody of the young child. For the next few years, Izuku refused to use his quirk at all, even when other kids would pile on and beat him up to see how strong he was, or to get revenge for all the people he killed. He never tried anything to stop them. Katsuki had been there to stop them most of the time, simply because it's pointless to see how strong someone who won't fight back is. It wasn't until Izuku was 8 years old when he used his quirk again. Coming Aunt Mitsuki, Izuku said as he trotted along with his guardian. Katsuki had stayed home with Masaru because he was running a fever, something Izuku never had to worry about. A side effect of his powerful fire quirk meant his body always ran at a heated 50 Celsius, which is enough to kill most bacteria, and any that does stay can't reproduce in his body, meaning he never got ill. We only have a few more items to get for the stew tonight, the blonde mother said over her shoulder, as Izuku carried a heavy bag, which was only 5 pounds. She had the other 6 bags. But he was her little helper and insisted on carrying some of the load. A noise caused her to freeze in her tracks, large amounts of screaming and panicking as a rush of people came from the marketplace. Sounds of gunfire, explosions, and the smell of blood wafted down the normally packed street. Dozens of villains were in battle with numerous teams of heroes, while the police were providing crowd control and suppressing fire. Mitsuki tried to shy Izuku away from the situation and down an alleyway, so they could head back from the battlefield. The body of a hero was flung into the building next to them, and a villain's attack went wide and struck the mother in the head, knocking her to the ground. Izuku's eyes widened in dread as he saw a faint trickle of red run down the side of her face. He began to think, his mind trying to process the scene in front of him. This is just like last time. Everyone I cared about is going to die. Because of me, Izuku's thoughts came to him. No. People will die, because of them. He turned his gaze into the war zone off to his side, his fingers flickering brilliant flames. Enough! Izuku screamed and let a massive pillar of flame that reached to the heavens from his body. The heroes, villains, police, and civilians all froze, unsure of the newest entrant in the fray. "No more!" The tiny child stomped out of the alley. "No more heroes!" he shouted, and with precise control belying his emotions, blasted them all into a wall. The villains smirked, assuming they had just gained a powerful ally, until Izuku glared at them. "No more villains!" The rapidly approaching blaze cowed them into submission as the torrent of fire did not dissipate but remained hovering over them. "No more death!" Izuku screamed. "Mizutofu is mine, so every hero and villain get out of here," the small boy ordered. The cracking sound of a gunshot rang through the quiet alley. A nervous officer had fired a shot at the child who wielded such terrifying power. The bullet melted into a puddle before it got within 5 feet of the boy. The national news had a field day. Local child declares the city of Mizutofu a no-go zone. Heroes were interviewed daily. "What are your plans to arrest this child for such blatant use of his quirk without a license? Are there any heroes capable of reigning in this little tyrant?" After a report came out that rising pro-hero Endeavor attempted to bring in the small boy, only to find out that Izuku didn't just control his flames, he controlled all fires, and even the powerful Hellflame fell under the small child's quirk supremacy. Then about a month later a new report came out, Mizutofu safest city in the country. Reports have come in that one of the most crime-ridden cities in Japan has become one of the safest with a drastic drop in villain activity in a single month since what is being dubbed the Midoriya incident. Reporters interviewed citizens extensively to gauge responses to that claim. Well, sometimes a villain shows up to challenge the kid, but no one's been able to even get close to him without getting burned up, a businessman said into a microphone. It's really turned the city into a more profitable location. Construction workers were questioned. "Wells, yes, we was used to stop all work nearly every days just to go patch up buildings and stuffs after's a villain fight. But now we just keep on schedule with building." The mayor of Mizutofu had this response. "On a purely economic basis, the drop in high-profile villain activity in the city has freed up a lot of resources that were previously diverted to repairs and incarcerations. We do not condone the declaration of one Izuku Midoriya, but there has been a noted benefit to the surrounding community after his statements." Over the next few years, there would be a few challenges to his reign in the city, as upstart villains and gangs would try to test themselves against the young boy, on the basis that if they could take him down, the city was theirs to do with as they pleased. There was a particularly devastating battle that took place near the Bakugo's home when a stone villain had attempted to power through the heat and get at the boy, thinking he was safe from the heat. But stone melts all the same, even if Izuku had to crank the heat to well over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Afterwards, Izuku decided that staying with the Bakugos was too dangerous. If people would attack him, then the people around him were also in danger. So, he moved out and found an apartment of his own, which, considering he was still a minor, was a miracle they even gave him one. He suspected the government was involved in allowing this. Things had gotten quiet in Mizutofu. Villains rarely ever attempted to challenge him anymore as he had an undefeated record, and even rookie hero groups gave up trying to bring him in, with the knowledge that the current number 2 Endeavor had already failed once. There were whispers about whether All Might would step in, but he never attempted to, stating that, "It's more important for me to be stopping an active crime now than go after a child where there is no crime." And some people accepted that, seeing as the boy was only breaking the law about using his quirk without a license and not stealing or murdering anyone, so it would rank low on the number 1's list of priorities. Present day, a few hours ago. Izuku was having an annoying day. He had gotten his results back from his high school mock exam that he took. He didn't particularly care which one he got into, but it turns out his principal had switched his test with the UA mock exam and he scored well above passing. The administrator's excuse was that if Izuku attended the school he could stop villains legally, as the boy clearly had an aptitude for it, which he had considered. Even over the years he never stopped wanting to be a hero, but wanting something and it being possible are two different things. Bakugo challenged him to another fight after school, which he handily won, seeing as the explosive teen's resistance to heat was not able to match Izuku's. He was told that Aunt Mitsuki was making katsudon and he'd never be his friend again if he didn't come over and spend time with his family. That had all changed when he neared his apartment after grabbing a few gifts for the only people that stayed in his life for all these years. Moments after unleashing his quirk, the intense heat rolled off Izuku's hand and scorched the wall behind him as large portions of the gelatinous body were burned away. A solid thud on the ground next to the apathetic teen drew his gaze. "Oh, hi, Kaken. Having fun?" "Don't you?" the teen wheezed. "Hi, Kaken me." The ash-blonde teen stood up on shaky legs as he took large gulps of air. "Your shit's burning," he said while pointing to the devastated alleyway. "Right?" Izuku raised his arm and in a sweeping motion drew in the fire and condensed it into a ball before snuffing it out. The crowd of Musudifarians cheered as their resident peacekeeper had stopped another villain. But they all got quiet as a shadow loomed over the two teens. Katsuki turned to look up at what was casting it before he reached over and shook Izuku's shoulder. "Deku, you might want to pay attention to this." Izuku groaned. He had groceries to put away. "Kaken, if it's another villain, I can handle." "All Might." The inner Haritaku in the boy came bursting out at seeing his favorite hero. In the flesh, young Midoriya, All Might shouted. The crowd of heroes and civilians watching what could be the greatest confrontation of their age. The Titanic hero stared down at the two powerful boys, then demurely spoke. "May we speak inside?" Izuku slowly nodded and pushed open the door for the giant man who had to squeeze himself through the smaller doorway. "Today is going to be a strange day," he muttered as he followed the number 1 into his home. Chapter 2. All Might looked around the sparsely furnished apartment. Even without many possessions, the room still felt cramped. The large hero turned to the person he came all the way across the country to meet. "Now, young Midoriya, I am sure you would like to get to the heart of the matter," All Might guessed. Izuku nodded in agreement. He had homework to do and dinner to prepare. "Oh wait, I'm going to Kaken's tonight," Izuku mused as the hero in front of him prattled on. "And that is why I have been sent here to guide you to a special test," All Might boasted. Bakugo noticed that his friend had spaced out again and slapped him upside the head with an explosion. "Oi, Deku, you weren't paying attention, were you?" he snarled at his green-haired friend. "Huh, what's sorry? I guess I got lost in my own thoughts," Izuku nervously chuckled. All Might slumped. Kids these days just don't listen to their elders anymore, he thought to himself. "I'll say it again then," All Might sighed. The UA principal received a strange mock exam result, and after a little digging determined that you had turned in a test that sent up a flag in the system for manual examination. All Might explained. "Okay, I guess that makes sense. I didn't even know I was taking the UA mock exam," Midoriya nodded. "My principal switched mine out on me, and I didn't notice." "That might do it." All Might rubbed his chin. Nevertheless, the result was a passing grade, which alone isn't enough to cause an alert in the system. It was this. All Might held out a copy of Izuku's test sheet. "Why I can't be a hero?" Izuku mouthed out. Nizu was concerned about this answer. All Might said, "Had it been most anyone else, nothing would have come of it. But you are not like anyone else, are you?" Midoriya looked at the floor. "No, I'm not. I'm a killer," he shrugged, being forced to recall all the death and destruction he had caused. "No, young Midoriya, you are a child." The blond man rested his large hand on Izuku's shuddering shoulder. "A lost child. One who had an unforeseen accident and is beating himself up over it." "So what?" Izuku snarled, shooting a deadly glare at All Might. "I killed all those people. They died. My neighbors, dead. The nice man at the corner store down the block that had discounted ice cream in the summer, dead. The family of cats that lived in the park, dead. My parents, dead. I did that. Me, all because I'm awful." Izuku roared as tears streamed down his cheeks. "I should beat myself up over it. I don't deserve to be a hero," Izuku screamed, as Bakugo took a step back as the flames surged from Izuku's body. "I lost control and people died because of it." All Might, who never took his hand from the distressed child's shoulder, even as his suit burned. "Just like you are doing now," he said firmly. Izuku blinked and noticed that he had set himself ablaze and burning everything around him. He hiccuped as he forced the flames to die down. I'm sorry, I can't," Izuku sniffled. All Might rubbed Izuku's shoulder, the boy's tears turning to steam at his high body temperature. "Yes, young Midoriya, you can. All Might interrupted. I believe that you can become a hero. You just someone to help guide you. If you would like, I could be that someone, the pro-hero offered. I know all too well about the struggle to control devastating power. The difference between us is that I had people around me who helped me. All Might looked at the apartment that seemed barely lived it. You have closed yourself off. Why? Why me though? Izuku rubbed his nose. Why should I get a second chance? It's not a second chance. All Might shook his head. You never even got a first chance, so please, let me help you. I don't know, Izuku mumbled, before suddenly being blasted by a fire extinguisher. Oi, fucker, don't set me on fire just because you're having a pity party, Bakugo shouted as he re-entered the room wielding the red metal canister, the nozzle aimed at his friend. You spend your time keeping this city safe because you think it's your duty to atone for your past mistake, Bakugo said as he set the extinguisher down next to the doorframe. That's retarded. You're retarded. Those people died because of an accident. It could have happened to you, me, or anyone else with a strong quirk that wasn't ready for it. You didn't kill those people, dumbass. Katsuki grabbed his friend's collar. So get your shit together, put on your big boy pants and take All Might's offer, because if I go to UA on my own, there's not going to be anyone there who could challenge me. Katsuki shoved his friend down. That's a selfish reason to go, Kakin, Izuku mumbled. Katsuki raised his voice. So fucking what? Who the fuck decided that you weren't allowed to be selfish sometimes? Huh? He shouted at Izuku. You can't always spend your time trying to right the wrongs. That's in the past. So you have an option. Keep fighting petty thugs. Or actually use your quirk to save people, because that's the only way you're going to feel better. But Izuku tried to protest. I will blast you with the extinguisher again if you try and make up some excuse. Take his deal, Katsuki said as his hand twitched over to the canister. Fine, Izuku sighed as he slumped his shoulders. He looked up to All Might. What do I need to do? He asked. Oh God, this is horrific bullshit, he mentally shouted as he dragged a refrigerator across the sand while All Might sat on top of it. All Might hummed as he swung his legs back and forth. Hurry up, Midoriya. This beach isn't going to clear itself, he taunted his protege, waving his hands at the crowd that had formed to watch their local celebrity in the #1 hero train. The flashing of cameras as people took photos of Izuku pulling the hero and appliance across the sand to the bed of a dump truck. Izuku groaned as he heard chatter. You know this is going to be national news, right? He informed his teacher. Well, I would have preferred a more secluded area, All Might admitted. But with how well known you are in the area, it's just easier for people to know what's going on. The green-haired teen huffed as he hefted the appliance into the vehicle. I could probably clear this entire beach in a few minutes if I incinerated everything here, he grumbled as he took a swig from his water bottle before spitting out the nasty taste in his mouth. We, and by that I mean everyone, already know of your skill with your quirk, All Might joked as he pulled up a video of Izuku battling some gang of plant villains who thought that the pyrokinetic kid was the perfect hero to cut their teeth on. This is to make sure your body is up to the same standards. The recommendation slot I am giving you is not a joke. I can't have my reputation tarnished by a substandard candidate, All Might proudly said. No, that happened when you decided to wear that ridiculous outfit. Izuku pointed at the All Might-themed tracksuit the hero was wearing. You're wearing your own merchandise. It's comfortable, All Might defended himself. Plus, I look great in it, he flexed a bit. It looks like you're wearing a pajama version of your hero outfit, Izuku teased. No, that would be this, All Might said loudly as he pulled out a pair of official All Might pajamas from somewhere. Those aren't even your size, Izuku rolled his eyes. All Might laughed. I know, they are yours, a mad gleam shone in the hero's eyes. Izuku took a step back. Oh no, no you don't. Izuku shook his head as All Might advanced on him holding the pajama. There is no way you're getting me in those. I won't. He paused his rant, then looked down. He was wearing the pajamas. You son of a... Izuku whispered as he realized the hero used his incredible speed to change his clothes without him noticing. Nuh-uh, young Midoriya. All Might waggled his finger. If you waste time changing, you'll never eep, All Might said as he ducked a fireball. Someone call Endeavor, because he's gonna become the new #1 after I turn All Might into flambe. Izuku shouted as he tossed more fire at the retreating hero. The mix of Izuku fans, All Might fans, reporters, and general looky-loos had a laugh as they watched the fire quirk user chase around the number one, who was dodging the flames shot his way. Bakugo poked a near-comatose Izuku. "Hey, if you die, can I have your video games?" he teased as his friend could only groan. Almost everyone in the school, possibly the country, was aware that Izuku had begun training for UA with All Might for a chance at his recommendation, so they understood that the regimen that the number one had put their classmate on was brutal, to put it kindly. "If I die, I'm taking you with me," Izuku grumbled as he swatted at Bakugo's position, too exhausted to put up much resistance. The green-haired boy rolled his head to the side. "So what's your training schedule like?" he asked his rival. "Oh, going to the gym, sitting in the sauna," Bakugo smirked. "Relaxing under the summer sun to maximize my sweat. It's so difficult. I had to get a lawn chair and drink refreshing lemonade," the blonde teased. His training began after he built up a good sweat. Then it was constant activity, but the warm-up portion was really something special. "I hate you," Izuku growled. "You are the worst human being to ever live," Izuku complained. "Just think it'll all be worth it once we meet up at UA." Bakugo patted him on the back as he dozed off again during lunch. Izuku's training had gained a large following on social media, pictures posted almost daily, with shots of him cleaning the beach and returning it to its pristine glory. Finally, after nearly 10 grueling months, he had done it. With a ferocious roar, Izuku let loose a pillar of flame, standing on the top of the last trash pile that he had loaded into the bed of the dump truck. "Oh my goodness," All Might shouted triumphantly. "Excellent work, young Midoriya," All Might praised his pupil. "You even went further beyond, very plus ultra of you," the pro hero said as he walked up to a shirtless and sweaty Izuku. The blonde fished out his phone from his pocket. Izuku turning to stare at his trainer when the bright flash of the camera app, this early in the morning nearly blinding him, and uploaded, All Might smirked. He actually ran the most popular of what was being called the Mizutafu Midoriya montage fan page, a small snippet of the internet that followed Izuku's training schedule and his efforts to clean the beach. A shirtless, sweaty, muscly young Midoriya was certain to get tons of likes and shares. "Excellent work. Now I'm sure you are wondering why I never had you go to a gym. Well, how is that pride in knowing that you not only trained your body but helped your local community as well?" Izuku was taking deep breaths of air. He looked up at the smiling man and smiled back. "Pretty good, actually," he admitted. "It was tough, but this was something someone without a quirk could have done, just to help out others, and isn't that the spirit of being a hero?" Izuku said. "Couldn't have said it better myself," All Might agreed. "And upload," he thought as he put Midoriya's response up on the page for others to see. "Well, there's no use standing around. We have a recommendation test for you to take." All Might clapped Izuku on the shoulder. Author's notes. After a fun, horrible few days in the wonderful city, shithole, that is Tucson, I have returned. Traffic sucks. I don't even want to know how someone got their car on the concrete divider that separates the lanes. But fuck that dude for adding an hour to my travel time. Lilty504. I can update revival of Goku, but this should have been said over there, not here. Annihilator 225. I have not decided on the hero name for him yet. I was considering Kagutsuchi, since that Japanese fire god killed his mother, but that might be a bit grim. The naming will happen later, and after I put some thought into it. For those wondering if there is a pairing, I was considering Izumomo, but I do that so much and wasn't sure if I wanted to do that again. She's just so adorable, and easy to write though. Uneasy face. Chapter 3 Recommendation. Here it is, my alma mater UA. All Might said proudly as he and Izuku walked up to the gate. All Might, the security system, Izuku was quick to point out. The gate was infamous for keeping out reporters and other looky-loos from disrupting the school. When the doors didn't slam shut on the two of them, Izuku looked up in confusion at All Might. "Oh, did I forget to mention? I am going to be a teacher at UA, All Might explained. "Huh, that's interesting," Izuku said, despite being a huge fan and not that he would say much against the hero. All Might did not have a reputation for being the most intelligent hero in the business. "Hey, I know that look," All Might waggled a finger. "I'll have you know I graduated top of my class in hero courses when I attended UA. I will make an excellent teacher, he scolded his pupil. Izuku threw up his hands. All right, I'll give you a fair shot. You have the experience here, Izuku said. It's not just all right, it's all might, the hero proudly said as he laughed at his own joke. And the teaching degree, Izuku shot out quickly as he hastened his pace. All Might paused in confusion. Teaching degree? Why would I need something like that? He muttered as he caught up with Izuku. Oh good, Toshinori, you've finally arrived, Nizu said as he greeted the pair at the door. We can begin now that everyone is here. Izuku and All Might began following the white principal to one of UA's many gyms. In the room stood far more people than Izuku had been expecting. Izuku started to take stock of the occupants. On one side of the room, seated at a table was the panel of judges, made up of what looked like pro heroes, namely Recovery Girl, number 13, and a man with tired eyes that Izuku didn't recognize, but his strange choice of attire could only mean he was a pro hero, among other people in business suits that likely were on the board of directors. Izuku took a glance at the other recommendation students, all 10 of them and their sponsors. A large snake-like boy, with striking reptilian features, was coiled up like a spring next to Uwabami, the snake hero. A girl with a black, spiky ponytail stood with what looked like a very busy businessman who was talking on a phone quickly. She looked nervous as she was taking glances at everyone else. Before he could go further into his thoughts on the people, a very loud and angry voice filled the room. "What's the big idea bringing a criminal here?" shouted Endeavor as he stormed over towards All Might and Izuku. "NG," All Might happily says as he puts himself between the number 2 and his protege. "It's been forever. How are you?" "Don't try and distract me, you buffoon." Endeavor tried to step past All Might. "That boy is a criminal, and I'm going to arrest him." Izuku rolled his eyes. "You couldn't do that when I was 9. What makes you think you have what it takes in your old age?" He snarked back. Doing so only made Endeavor's anger flare up and ignite his hands. A move matched by Izuku. "Oh really? You want to do this now?" "Ahem, I will be having none of that here today." Nizu coughed as he strode confidently between the two pyros. "All Might, if you and your recommended would please stand in line with the rest of them." The white mouse gestured to the line of people. A girl with a bicolored bob hairstyle was glaring at him while another boy with a shaved-down head was smiling like a kid in a candy store. "I didn't think there would be so many people," Izuku whispered to All Might. "You have some of the most influential people in society in this room, young Midoriya." All Might whispered back, much louder than his green-haired companion. "Some of the wealthiest families, highest-ranked politicians, and top pros all compete to have their chosen student earn a recommendation." "Very good, All Might. So glad that you can still recognize some faces," Nizu said loudly over their conversation, causing a few people to chuckle nervously. "Now then, I would like to get on with the ceremony if you would," Nizu ordered as a request for him to cease speaking. "The test you will undertake will determine if you have the mastery of your quirk at a level that supersedes any test we could give that is not tailor-made to challenge you," Nizu boldly stated as he glanced around the room. "Now if the sponsors, starting with Ms. Qin, would introduce their candidates, we can begin." Izuku barely paid attention as he began to wonder about what possible tests they could have conceived of for each student. He knew UA and likely other hero agencies kept tabs on him, so a test for him could just be a way to see if they could stop him if they had to. He was snapped out of his thought when he felt All Might's large hand press down on his shoulder. "And this is Izuku Midoriya. He might not look like much, but he's got the heart of a hero," All Might all but shouted to the rest of the room. "Also, who wants to see him napping in pajamas?" All Might said as he pulled out his cell phone. "Hey," Izuku said as he frantically reached for the pro's phone. "I thought I said to delete all those." He tried to grab at the device. All the while, All Might was using his greater size and speed to keep Izuku away from the phone, which would soon be melted if he relinquished control of it. "Well, I lied," All Might bluntly stated. "You have no idea how many likes those pictures got." The other candidates and their sponsors were flabbergasted at seeing the symbol of peace and a wanted criminal acting so childish with one another. "Yes, Izuku Midoriya, our most infamous candidate," Nizu said as he chuckled watching the two buffoons. "Well, he certainly is far different than many of the reports I had received on him would lead me to be." Reports? A green-haired girl inquired. Oh yes, young Midoriya here. Nizu gestured to the green-haired boy who was busy not glaring at all, who was sending a message to some online forum about his daily shenanigans with Izuku. Already has captured over 100 criminals and defeated many up-and-coming pro heroes, Nizu informed the other attendees. All unlicensed, of course, which is why I am pleased as punch to see him walk down the path of righteousness and follow the law as it was intended. So what you're saying is that he's already on the level of a pro? A skeletal-faced student asked nervously. Most certainly, Nizu nodded. Which is why he will be the first to take his test. So please, Mr. Midoriya, if you would step into the center of the room, we will begin, the rodent motioned for Izuku, who complied. Izuku felt a little anxious. He was used to having some attention from fans when he wandered around town, but this was different, being analyzed like this. He almost missed the clicks of machine guns spinning up that came from behind him, a quick shift of his foot backwards to send a gout of flame at whatever was now occupying that space. Excellent spatial awareness, Izawa muttered as he started marking down his thoughts on Izuku. The next robots sent out were either cooked from the inside out or melted to the floor by the intense heat, forcing the other candidates began to step away from the blaze as it grew more intense. He attacks the fundamental weakness in machines by raising their temperature too high for them to function and causing them to overheat and shut down, Izawa thought. He waited for the signal from Nizu before he activated his own quirk to turn off Izuku's. When the flame suddenly died on Izuku's body, everyone else but the UA staff or pros who had worked alongside the underground hero were confused. But even Izawa was almost stunned when Izuku simply fell into punching and kicking the machines to break them apart, digging through the plates and using sharpened metal to continue fighting without his quirk. Nearly every test taker before this who was under the effect of Izawa's quirk simply froze for a moment or two, trying to get their quirk to function, but Izuku was used to sparring with Katsuki on the regular. Starting back to the first time Bakugo had to pull a few kids off of Izuku. Fine Deku, you don't want to use your quirk, but that doesn't mean you can't still fight back, Katsuki grumbled as he helped Izuku to his feet. This led to the two of them trading blows with each other over the years, and with All Might's training his body was more than ready to rend metal. I think we've seen enough, Nizu said as he pushed a button to deactivate the robots. Well done, young Midoriya. The principal clapped his paws together, congratulating the first person to pass the test. Nizu surveyed the room and noticed a distinct presence of flame all over the torched machines. We may need to relocate or activate the fire suppression system to begin cleaning this up, he pondered. Izuku looked around for understanding. Oh yeah, he realized before causing all the flames in the room to draw to his lifted finger, coalescing and condensing into a swirling ball of fire that he shrunk down until Izuku could snuff it out. He then moved over and grabbed the nearest robot that he could and started to haul it off to the side, it being no different than the exercise that All Might had him do for 10 months straight. After a few minutes, Izuku had managed to clear the space again, wiping his brow of the sweat he had built up. He failed to notice the stares he had been getting from the other potential students. Well, that solves dilemma. The sound of Nizu's paws hitting each other drew the attention back to the event before them. Do we have any volunteers to go next? Nizu asked with a grin. Endeavor pushed forward the girl with bicolored hair. Shomei will go next, he stated firmly. The girl glared and shifted her hair to obscure her face, as she quickly went to the center of the room. Nizu nodded to Izawa as he pushed the button to begin the test anew. A vast nova of ice exploded out of her, freezing the machines and blocking more from exiting the hatches in the floor. Well, that's certainly effective, Nizu admitted as he turned off the robots. Izuku was impressed. He hadn't expected to see someone with an elemental quirk close to his power for a long time. Wonder why she's avoiding eye contact? He thought to himself as she generated heat to thaw out the machines. She's got control over both, he frantically thought. Izuku shuffled on the spot and whined. Need to go to the bathroom, young Midoriya. All Might leaned over and asked Izuku. New, Izuku groaned. She's got such an interesting quirk, and I didn't bring a single notebook to write anything down, he explained. All Might laughed at the dismay Izuku was experiencing, since he was well aware of the young man's hobby. Well, that's just a darn shame. You better hope they all get in if you want to learn more about their quirks then. All Might ruffled Izuku's green hair. Izuku looked to see a girl with gray skin and spines growing out of her shoulders take the center stage. Whoa, you can do it, Izuku cheered on the test taker, his sudden outburst causing everyone else in the room to look at him in confusion. Before the boy with a shaved head also started cheering as well. Yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go, Inasa joined in. Will you brats be quiet? Aizawa shouted. Stop distracting the other test takers, the pro hero ordered. Aizawa, come now, there is nothing wrong with providing moral support to others, All Might chastised his soon-to-be colleague. There is when I have a headache, so All Might, bluster, keep your candidates quiet, Aizawa grumbled as he slumped in his seat. Izuku quieted down. Last thing he wanted was to be disqualified. He didn't rightly care too much if he passed or not, but he wouldn't want All Might to think he deliberately failed. The girl rolled her shoulder as she prepared to combat the robots. The spines in her shoulders shot out at an incredibly speed and embedded themselves into the robots. The sharp bone protrusions shut down the machines. Izuku tapped his fingers along his arm for all the information he would need to memorize as the tests ran along. It came turn for the nervous black-haired girl, who looked to her sponsor for support. The person not taking their eyes off their phone. Izuku scoffed and rolled his eyes. Come on, you can do it, Izuku shouted, suddenly startling the girl into jumping on the spot. Show us what you got, he said as he shifted his gaze to see Aizawa glaring at him. Oh, bite me, Banana Man, he shouted at the pro hero who was sitting in his yellow sleeping bag. All Might bit back a laugh. Midoriya, you can't. He tried to admonish the boy but found the situation too funny. Oh, I can't. I'm telling Hisashi that one. All Might laughed boisterously. Momo stood almost frozen in shock. She had been a bundle of nerves coming in, first because she was aware that she had gotten this slot because of sizable donations from her family, then seeing not just the number 2, but the number 1 pro heroes in the country, if not the world, bring in 2 immensely powerful candidates. But this boy was trying to encourage her when her own sponsor, a company executive, was too busy negotiating some deal with a business on their phone to give her any advice or attention. She made a mental note to investigate who this Izuku Midoriya person was, regardless of her passing or not. He seemed to have a reputation already among the heroes in the room, and there was a distinct feeling of unease when Endeavor and Midoriya butted heads. One more outburst. Aizawa waggled his finger, menacingly. Izuku threw up his hands in exasperation. Fine. I'll keep my cheering to myself. He folded his arms in defeat. Ms. Yaoyorozu, if you would, Nizu said as he raised his remote control fob again. Momo smirked. The tension seemed to have lifted, and she was thinking clearer now after the humorous exchange she was witness to. With red sparkling energy, she formed a weapon and began to fight the robots as they approached her. With quick efficiency, she was creating items to help with the situation as the fight raged on. Izuku bounced on his feet. Oh, come on. She's making objects. I have so many questions. This isn't fair. I need to write this down. Izuku whined at All Might. Sighing, All Might inconspicuously walked over to the table where the board members were taking notes. Can I borrow a sheet of paper and a pen? All Might requested. The young man he had approached stared wide-eyed at the Titanic man before him and nodded before passing the requested items over. Thank you very much, All Might said graciously before coming back to Midoriya. Here, now try not to wet yourself in excitement, All Might teased. Oh ha, you're just worried that she's going to have more pages of notes than you, Izuku said as he began writing down the critical information. Drawings and other specific uses for the quirk could wait until much later for him to detail in his notebooks. This caused All Might to scratch his cheek because he had seen the boy's notes, and without revealing all the details of One for All to him, he had been surprisingly more accurate with his guesses than any other person he had met. Well done, Ms. Yaoyorozu, Nizu clapped in support of the potential student who had just finished her battle. Now then, Mr. Yurashi, if you would. The principal gestured to the eager tall teen. Momo quickly returned to her spot in the line. After taking a glance at the strange green-haired boy, the ghost of a smile graced her face as she turned her attention to the next candidate. Her hair whipped forward and obscured her vision as the boy's incredibly powerful wind quirk sucked the machines up and crashed them into each other, ending his battle swiftly. As the candidates each battled a set of machines, Izuku kept noticing that Endeavor's candidate kept looking over to him. He was used to seeing some reaction on people's faces, but this girl was like stone. All Might passed. Izuku nudged the hero who was spacing out slightly. Unlike the other sponsors who were invested simply to see what the next batch of potential top heroes would include, All Might was more focused on trying to stay awake. HRRN, yes, young Midoriya. All Might shook his head to clear his thoughts. Who's the girl with the fire and ice quirk? Izuku whispered. You weren't paying attention, were you? All Might rubbed his knuckles into Izuku's scalp. That's Endeavor's daughter. Well, second daughter, third child, All Might explained. He stood up and looked at his rival. Hey Enji, Shomei is your third child, correct? All Might asked. Endeavor rolled his eyes and didn't even look at the blonde hero. Fourth, he corrected. Okay, so fourth, All Might shrugged. Hey, how come I never see your lovely wife anymore? All Might asked a second question. Endeavor's response was only a growl. While Izuku and All Might were having their discussion, the last candidate finished their battle. Well done, everyone, Nizu said happily. Now we can begin the second portion of the exam, he said as he pushed another button and obstacles began to rise out of the floor. Nizu stepped around the edge and walked over to the table the staff was seated at. For this next part, you will participate in an obstacle course. He pushed the same button on the fob, leading one to question its purpose. A large monitor descended from the ceiling and hovered over the table. We will begin in the same order. So young Midoriya, if you would, Nizu chuckled. See, now you got everyone else doing it too. Izuku griped it all, might as he headed to the starting line. Well, let's get this over with, Izuku huffed as he rotated his neck and limbered up his arms. He stared down the first obstacle. Multiple steps alternated requiring balance and agility to jump from one to the other. Izuku smirked at how simple this was going to be. Begin when you are ready, Nizu informed him. Izuku stepped out of his shoes as he did not want to ruin them and rolled up his pant legs. He began to hop on his feet before kicking off and shooting a blast of flame which propelled him across the field. He recalled practicing these moves with Bakugo one day when they were much younger. Hey, stop fucking copying me, you nerd, Bakugo shouted as he alternated setting off explosions in his hands to awkwardly give himself thrust. Fine, then I'll just use my feet then, Izuku shouted back, before jumping up and using his quirk to launch himself skyward. In retrospect, suddenly accelerating straight up was not a smart plan. So over the years he learned to control spurts of flame and mainly used his hands to correct angle while his feet provided most of the speed and acceleration. A large object jumping into his path of travel, forcing Izuku to spin a sweeping kick-out, slowing his momentum and dropping him down to a platform. Izuku weaved around the pillars, jumping and sending blasts of flame to increase his speed before coming to a large wall. Wanting to try out a move he had only theorized, Izuku ran straight at the stone and planted his feet on it. While rapidly increasing his temperature, the concrete sloughed and gave under his weight, allowing him to use the area as a foothold to run up the side. A Johnny back flip before returning to his flight. Izuku landed on the finishing platform with his feet and hands steaming from their increased temperature, heating up the moisture in the air. Excellent work, truly marvelous. Nizu clapped along with a few of the others in attendance at his performance. Such masterful control over your quirk. The principal praised Izuku as he went to collect his shoes at the starting platform. All Might let out a loud whistle. Really? You can fly too? He questioned as he never fully tested Izuku's quirk's limits. Yeah, but it takes a lot of concentration and power, Izuku said as he rolled his shoulders. The temperature in the room went from almost uncomfortably hot from the heat generated by Izuku's quirk to cold as a freezer when large sheets of ice formed. Izuku turned to watch Shomei sliding around on the ice she had created, her grace and movements flawless as she practically danced her way across the field. Wow, Izuku whispered as he watched her finish the course even faster than he did. Oh, I know that. Wow. All Might shook Izuku's shoulder. Oh, come off it. Izuku shoved the hero off of him. Just impressed is all, nothing more. He denied the accusation. as he turned his blushing face away from the hero. It was embarrassing to get called out like that. So what if she has good moves and nice clear skin? Izuku thought in frustration. That girl with black hair is just as pretty. So with the other girl with green hair. Izuku continued his musings. Izuku was pulled from his more emotionally charged thoughts as he noticed the green-haired girl was next up for the obstacle course. I wonder what she's going to do, Izuku muttered as he missed seeing her battle the robots. When he was focused on speaking with All Might, he gaped as he saw her body separate into multiple segments and fly across the field quickly, netting her a score that landed her safely into the middle of the pack. That's so. How? What force is her body using to allow her to do that? That's amazing, Izuku said out loud, for everyone to hear. Wow, I haven't seen you fanboy that hard in a while, young Midoriya, All Might teased. Hey, if you want, Setsuna shouted as she recombined herself. I can show you some really fun ways I can use my quirk, she winked as she sauntered by, adding a swing in her step. Before All Might could even open his mouth, Izuku punched him in the arm. Don't, Izuku warned him. Fine, All Might sulked, crossing his arms and pouting. Never let me have any fun, All Might complained. Weren't you not even an hour ago trying to show off me in pajamas to everyone here? Izuku shot back. So, no one took me up on it, All Might deflected. If you two are quite done, Nizu chastised the conversing pair as he kicked his feet back and forth while sitting on the table. Izuku and All Might apologized for causing more distractions during the testing process, but the students reached the final portion of the recommendation test. A written exam, Nizu said proudly. One devised by myself, to see the extent of your knowledge. Tables and chairs were brought over for the students to sit at while their sponsors meandered at the edge. After 1 hour, the time had finished and the tests were collected. Well, I hope you all enjoyed your time here today, Nizu happily said. We will send the results of the exam out to your sponsors once decisions have been made. Until then, I wish you well. As Izuku and All Might walked down the path towards the gate, Izuku thought on his performance. So how do you think I did? Izuku asked. Excellent, All Might answered. I have no doubts whatsoever that you will pass. You're not just saying that because you're going to be a teacher here, are you? Izuku questioned. All Might shook his head. Nonsense, I have no say in the admission process, and even if I did, I wouldn't abuse it. If you get in, it's because of your own hard work, All Might responded. Hey, you want to get something to eat? Izuku offered. This took a while, and I'm still hungry from this morning. All Might nodded. Sure, I could go for a bite. I know a place that caters to heroes so we won't be bothered by press or the fans, All Might agreed. I think I might like my time at UA, Izuku sighed as he wrapped his hands together behind his head. That's just because you want to be around all those cute girls, All Might teased Izuku as he took off at a jog. Izuku blushed furiously as the accusation. Oh my god, and you're going to be teaching there, he lamented. Why didn't I say no all those months ago? He shouted to the sky. Author's notes. I like the dynamic I have with Izuku and All Might. They have a friendship as opposed to a student/teacher or idol worship. So it's very different than I have seen in other stories. Refreshing to write as well. Sassy Izuku because he spent 10 months with All Might and will not put up with any of his shenanigans. I think I teased some possible pairings in this fairly well. No, Izuku will not get Ofa. In fact, I made it a point that he isn't aware of Ofa's existence. He does know about Small Might, but the quirk is still not told to him because he doesn't need to know about it. He's aware All Might is getting weaker. It's just not his business to be involved with Ofa, though. Chapter 4. Izuku received his letter in the mail a few days later. After playing the video that featured All Might informing him of his acceptance, he shrugged and hucked it in the recycling. Izuku had no doubts that he would pass the tests, but was a little disappointed that he wouldn't know who else managed to make it in from the recommendation. Izuku walked into his junior high homeroom where they were throwing a massive party. It would seem he was not the only person from Aldera to make it into UA. A large banner that congratulated both him and Bakugo for passing the crazy entrance exam. The hag is going to flip her shit if you don't come by for dinner tonight, Deku, Katsuki warned. She already knows we both got accepted. Izuku waved his friend off. I will promise, he responded as they parted ways at the gate. Just want to make sure the beach isn't getting littered on again. Izuku took pride in clearing that beach, so he made a habit of returning to it every so often to clean up loose garbage people might have left. But with how public his training with All Might was of the area, other people seemed to be doing a good job of cleaning up not only the beach, but the surrounding areas as well. "Excuse me," a voice called out from behind him as he sat in the sand and watched the people play and relax on the beach. "Mr. Midoriya," the same voice spoke again. Izuku turned his head to look at who could be addressing him. He was a local celebrity, but for the most part he wasn't bothered too much by the people who resided in Mizutofu since he'd been living there for years at this point. He quickly recognized her as one of the other potentials for the coveted recommendation slots at UA. "I'm Momo Yaoyorozu," the teen girl introduced herself as she stepped away from a classy luxury vehicle. An intimidating bodyguard stood by the car and watched as the girl approached Izuku. Izuku stood up and shook off any sand that had stuck to him. "Hello, I'm Izuku Midoriya, but you already know that. How can I help you?" he asked as he extended his arm out for a handshake. Momo quickly shook his hand. "I wanted to ask you a few questions actually, if you don't mind." Tilting his head, Izuku pondered what she could possibly want to ask him. Without telepathy, he'd have to respond, so he shrugged. "Sure, I could try to answer some questions." "Why now?" Momo started with the one that was screaming in her head. "Pardon? Why try to be a legitimate hero now? I did some research into you, as I'm sure the other candidates who didn't recognize you immediately will have also done so. But you've been stopping crime without much fuss from other heroes or the government for so long. What is so different now that would have you change your modus operandi?" Momo questioned. "All Might asked me to," Izuku said honestly. He turned and stared at the setting sun as he sat down on the beach to soak in the view. "That's it?" Momo exclaimed. "Just he asked you to do this, and so you are." She questioned the motives of the boy in front of her. "Well, it's a little more complicated than that, but yeah, he can be pretty convincing. I guess my friend threatening me with a fire extinguisher kind of helped," Izuku said with a smirk, the orange-hued sunlight glistening off his eyes. "Next question, Ms. Yaoyorozu?" Momo sat down in the sand next to Izuku. She trailed her hand down her skirt to straighten it out. "Why did you cheer for me and the others?" she quickly added on. "Not every person there was going to get into the school, so why try to help others?" "Well, I'm excited about quirks, so if everyone does good and they accept more people, then I get to see more cool quirks." "That's it? You just want to see cool quirks?" Momo inquired confusedly. "Well, not just that. You also didn't seem to have anyone rooting for you." Izuku closed his eyes as he listened to the crashing waves. "That lady that came with you barely took her eyes off her phone. That must have been nerve-wracking because you couldn't even talk to them to ease any tension." He exhaled deeply. "I can understand feeling of having nobody in your corner. Nobody on your side to cheer for you and want you to succeed. How? You're a local legend. You must have tons of fans? And even more critics, tell me. When you did your research into me, how far into my past did you go?" Izuku asked as he slowly stood up. "Only a few years to see why you got your reputation," Momo answered. "Go back further," Izuku said as he left the beach and the young lady behind. "Aunt Mitsuki," Izuku called out as he entered the Bakugo apartment. "I'm here." "Finally, you shithead," Katsuki shouted. "We've been waiting for ages. We're starving." Mitsuki slapped her son on the head and smiled at Izuku. "Ignore him. How are you doing? You got accepted too. How does it feel being one step closer to a hero?" Izuku sat down at the table. "Surreal. I mean, I gave up on all of that. Then All Might showed up and now, it's just..." Masaru chuckled. "Feels like a dream, son." Izuku nodded as he quietly ate, giving responses with asked questions. "You ready to get started in a few weeks?" Bakugo asked as the two friends lay on his roof. "I think so, yeah," Izuku said as he stared into the night sky. "So All Might's going to be one of our teachers then?" Bakugo rolled over to look at his friend. "What's he like?" "A huge dork. Seriously," Izuku sighed. "If I didn't see it firsthand, I wouldn't believe it. But he acts like a kid, and it's kind of nice actually." "Really?" Bakugo raised his eyebrow in disbelief. "Yeah, really. He may seem imposing, like some unbeatable obstacle, but he's still just a guy. Like I can see why the villains fear him because he's got so much power." But when you're sitting and having lunch with him, it's just so strange. He lets out a lot of it, and it's pretty relaxing, Izuku said. I feel like I can tell him things I'm not sure about, and he'll help me. Sounds like a dad to me, Bakugo laughed. No, I mean, I don't see All Might as my dad. I haven't. Dude, no, I get you. You still see the hag and my dad as aunt and uncle, but you never really got to grow up with your parents, so it's not too crazy you'll see some other people as replacements eventually. When did you get all psychological? Izuku questioned as he sat up on his elbows. I didn't. It just sounds like something people might do, Bakugo scoffed and waved off his friend. Yeah, maybe you're right, but I hope not. How weird would that be if I called him dad in the middle class? I'd probably die of embarrassment. Oh man, that'd be hilarious. I'd probably put it on a t-shirt or something. You're an ass Kakin. Fuck you, Deku, Bakugo cackled. Here it is, UA. Bakugo smiled smugly. Where a bunch of losers came before me, and after I leave, all they'll be stuck teaching is more losers. Oh my god, get inside, you egotistical shorty, Izuku shouted as he shoved his friend forward. Shorty, do you want to die? Bakugo raged at the comment. The two measured their height before they came to UA, and now Izuku had overtaken him by 1 centimeter, which he has not failed to mention at any point. Izuku figured they would have some more growth spurts in the coming years, and would each overtake one another a couple of times. All it did was add to their competitive nature. Come on, let's find 1A and get settled in. Izuku shook his head. I'll get there first, Bakugo shouted as he raced past. Real mature, Izuku shouted back, then took off running. No fair, you had a head start. As Izuku and Katsuki came upon the 1A door, they opened and Katsuki took his rightful place in the front desk. Because all the rest of you are behind me, he shouted. Izuku rolled his eyes and scanned over the class. Ah, Ms. Todoroki, Ms. Yaoyorozu. Izuku waved as he walked back towards them. Todoroki stared at him, showing no emotion, but Yaoyorozu immediately burst into tears. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Midoriya. I didn't mean anything by it. Please, I'm not normally so insensitive, she bawled as she latched Midoriya into a tight hug. Izuku squirmed and fell off balance as Momo held him. I don't Kakin, help, Izuku called out. Suplex, use a suplex, Bakugo shouted encouragement from the front of the room. Shut up, Izuku shot back. Yaoyorozu, it's fine. I don't know why you're crying, but I forgive you. Please, let me go. I can't feel my organs. Momo quickly let him go and wiped her eyes with a handkerchief she made. I did as you said and looked back further into your past. And I saw the reports. Feel awful for bringing it up. It must have been so traumatizing. Izuku nodded his head as he comprehended why she had such a strong reaction. Look, that was all over a decade ago. I'm fine, he said reassuringly as he patted her on the shoulder. Smooth Deku, Bakugo shouted. Commit die yourself, you walking anger issue, Izuku responded. He turned his attention back to the distraught girl instead of the pompous teenager he grew up with. It's okay. You didn't know and I did tell you to look further, so don't feel bad, Izuku calmly asked. Momo nodded and sniffed. That's so tragic. I know. The door slid open and Aizawa walked in, wearing a large yellow sleeping bag. Take your seats, don't waste my time.
Ah, Bananaman, Izuku exclaimed in shock.
Of course, and I am your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa, not Banana Man, he informed his class. Put on these tracksuits and head out to the field. We're doing a little test. The class as a group went along with the instructions and were finally out on the field in front of their teacher, who gave a quick speech about needing to know one's limits and that UA's unconventional methods allowed him to get that knowledge in various and sometimes strange ways. Izuku waited out on the field as the students began to line up. Since many of you took the entrance exam, I will tell you, I don't care for it. I think it's a waste of time and money and tells me very little about your strengths and weaknesses, as it doesn't take much to destroy a bunch of machines. So today, I will be testing your physical abilities as well as your creativity with your quirks. Bakugo Katsuki, throw this baseball as far as you can. You are allowed to do so in any way, so long as you don't leave the pitching circle. Awesome, finally something fun, Bakugo said as he took the ball and hurled it many hundreds of meters.
Die Real heroic kakan, Izuku teased.
Just because you have no hope of beating my score doesn't mean you need to be salty, Bakugo shot back. Boys, you can make out later, Aizawa scolded. We have the rest of this testing to get through. As the class snickered and followed the teacher further down the field.
50-Meter Dash.
As students went down the line, Izuku removed his shoes in preparation. Got a problem with footwear, Kirishima joked. Just don't want to melt them. It'd get expensive if I did that all the time, Izuku responded. He lined up next to a boy with blonde hair. Interesting belt, Izuku commented. It is quite stylish, no, Aoyama replied. Go, Aizawa shouted. In the moment, Izuku kicked off the ground and shot a jet of flame out of the soles of his feet and propelled himself like a rocket down the runway. How was that, Banana Man? Izuku smugly said. Get in line, problem child, Aizawa said without missing a beat. Izuku shrugged at the dismissal and went to stand in line. He didn't notice the hateful glare he was getting from a couple of students. As the day went on, Izuku proceeded to perform well above his expectations, as he got to see the fruits of his labor in a numerical score instead of just the feeling that he was getting stronger. After demonstrating his ability for controlled propulsion, earning him the top score in the long jump, something snapped in a student. Are we all just going to pretend it's not a joke that you let a murderer into its student body? Ojiro shouted, causing Mineta to falter in his ball throw. Excuse me, Aizawa said, halting the next test taker. You heard what I said, Ojiro said, hatred steeped in his voice. This guy killed how many thousands of people, and what? You just lets him in. Do you want to die, Tailman? Bakugo threatened. Oh, that's good. The murderer surrounds himself with more violent thugs. I'm ready to fight whenever you are. It'd be more than he gave my aunt and uncle, Ojiro accused Izuku. Hey man, you can't just go around. Kirishima tried to insert himself into the argument. No, Izuku stopped him. He's right. Those people died because of me, Izuku admitted as he walked up to Ojiro. So what are you going to do about? If it makes you feel better you can hit me, you wouldn't be the first. Ojiro grit his teeth and for a moment tensed like he was going to attack, but simply slammed his tail into the ground and walked away. Aizawa sighed as he figured that something like this would happen and was glad it didn't come to blows. Let's get this over with, baseball throw. Aizawa distracted his class as he tossed the ball to the nearest student. After the class had been dismissed with no one being expelled, Aizawa had Ojiro stay behind. Why would you do something so boneheaded as challenging someone like Izuku Midoriya to a fight? He asked bluntly. He's the reason my aunt, uncle, and so many innocent people died. He needs to be stopped, Ojiro hissed. Aizawa glared. And you think you're the one to do it? Sorry, but stronger, better equipped, more trained, and more ruthless have tried. Not even the number 2 could beat him, and right now the number 1 is sponsoring him, Aizawa mentioned. So I'll get better, so I can put him away where he belongs, Ojiro spit. Are we done here? He asked angrily. For now, yes. Aizawa dismissed his angry student. Why did I have to get him in my class? He moaned in dismay as he zipped up his sleeping bag. So, why did that one boy call you a murderer? Kaminari questioned as the 1A students headed towards the train station. Because I am, Izuku replied. Deku, Bakugo hissed. It was an accident. They still died, Izuku countered. Wait, are you? Ida guessed. You are, Izuku Midoriya, the sole hero of Mizuaifu, Ida stated as he pieced together his classmate's identity. That's me, though hero is a bit of a stretch, Izuku shrugged. Wait, who is he? Mineta asked. Uraraka bounced over. I know you. My parents got a ton of work when you got your quirk, she said. Oh wait, that's what he was talking about then. She realized why her parents having work connected to the accusation. Yeah, Izuku replied. I got my quirk and nearly burned down an entire city and 3,495 people died. Untold damage to property and thousands more injured, and their lives ruined. Damn, Jiru whistled. So you must be strong then. Second strongest, Shomei joined the conversation. He has defeated my father in one-on-one combat. Currently only All Might can make a claim to having a more powerful quirk than he does, and those two have not fought. And your father is?
Mina Kuhoned.
The number 2 pro-hero endeavor, Shomei replied. Izuku is currently undefeated in combat against numerous heroes and villains over the last 10 years. Kaminari whistled in disbelief. Dang, you even have a fan. I am not a fan. I just wanted to know more about the boy who infuriates my father so much, Shomei denied. Izuku shook his head, dismissing the idea. Well, she wouldn't be the first or last person to make a profile on me, he mused. Nizu has one on me as well. Still impressive to already have that much recognition even before coming to UA though, Kirishima said. Well, we'll see how much that actually means in the next few days when the school gets into full swing. Won't we? Izuku said as he and his classmates stepped onto the train. Chapter 5. And as Izuku predicted, UA was going to test everything about them. Their early classes on the second morning were fairly rigorous. Most schools typically start off slowly with the lessons and try to get a measure of where the students are at academically and take a week or so before getting into the new material. However, because much of what the hero course taught was not something that was touched on in previous schools, the various teachers they had didn't waste a moment before assigning long and difficult homework. Dang it, Kaminari groaned as he looked at the stack of papers he would need to work on. This is going to be tough. When do we do the fun, hero stuff? He complained as he and some of the others sat down to lunch. Hopefully soon, Bakugo growled as he stabbed the food his mother had made. Hey, Deko, when do we have class with All Might? He called out across the cafeteria. All conversations halted at the mention of classes with the number 1 hero. Izuku looked up from tray of rice and blinked. Yes, you dumbass, Bakugo called out again. Oh, that's Foundational Hero Studies. It's going to be the last class of the day, alternating with 1B and the upper years, Izuku answered. Because there is no 2A class this year, each year we'll have All Might once a week. Otherwise, any other days will be with our homeroom teacher and whichever other teachers are free at the time. How do you know all that? Kaminari questioned. It's on the syllabus, Ida scolded as he hurried from his table to where the blonde was sitting. How could you not read the packet every student received? The number of rules alone are a delight to learn. So lunch became filled with the chatter about regulations and information that Ida felt was important for every student to learn, allowing most others in the cafeteria to tune him out and finish eating. I am here, a voice boomed as the door to 1A opened. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might proudly stated as he strutted into the room. Before the students could ooh and ah at his presence, Izuku shouted at him. Normal people don't enter a room like that, or announce themselves, you giant toddler. Really? All Might smiled knowingly. So what you're saying is that normal people don't dress up and maybe, shall we say, practice announcing themselves. He dangled the bait in front of Midoriya. The green-haired teen's eyes narrowed dangerously. You didn't, he seethed as he watched his mentor smirk back at him. Yes, young Midoriya, All Might chuckled. Now, let's try that again. How does a normal person enter a room? Just like you did, Izuku backed down, knowing that All Might had some embarrassing dirt on him. That's what I thought. Now, class, today you will have that first taste of combat, he said as he pressed a button. So quickly don your costumes and meet me outside. God, Deku, could you have gone for a more basic costume? Katsuki rolled his eyes as he watched Izuku don his hero outfit. What? Izuku quirked an eyebrow. I think it's pretty rad. You look like an American biker with all that leather. It's silly, he commented as he strapped big bulky hand grenades to his wrists and placed an explosion-shaped mask on his face. Right? I'm the one who looks silly, Izuku said sarcastically as he flared up his fire, with it rolling under his skin. The thin strips through the flame-retardant fabric lit up. Shining lines of red and orange shifted under the costume. A series of numbers on his shoulder also became visible through the light. 3495. Izuku, Katsuki groaned. No Kaken, I can't not have it. Izuku cut off his friend as he left the changing room. Very impressive, everyone, All Might proudly said as he watched the students came out the field. Loving everyone's style. Super cool, he beamed as he flashed a thumbs up. Nice jacket, Jiru smirked at not being the only one in leather. Heh, you too, Izuku smiled back. So today, you will engage in combat training, All Might said as he paced back and forth. An important aspect of being a hero is being able to fight the bad guys. Now some of you, he glanced at Izuku, may already have some experience with fighting people. However, I will treat you all the same and expect you to all try your best. Man, hope I don't go up against Midoriya, Kaminari whispered to Todoroki. You might be fine, with your ice and all that, but BRR, he shook himself nervously. I wouldn't mind getting closer to Midoriya, Shomei stoically said as she stared at Izuku, who was listening to All Might. Now to randomly select teams, All Might happily said as he pulled a box from behind out. Sir, Mineta said nervously. Isn't that maybe a little unfair? The short purple boy said as he looked around at some of the other students, namely those who he saw the previous day outperform him at almost every task. Yes, All Might proudly stated as he pulled out the first name. Team A, Mashireo Ojiro and, sorry bud, Katsuki Bakugo. The two blondes shared a hateful look before heading off to the side. And lastly, Team I forgot what letter I was on, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya. All Might clapped as the two remaining students kind of knew who they were paired with as they were the last. Now to randomly decide who you will face, All Might stated as he pulled out a separate jug with lettered plastic balls in it. He seems to be basing a lot of this lesson on random chance, Momo whispered to her partner so that her teacher didn't hear her questioning his method. Yeah, it makes sense, Izuku said, not caring about his own volume. He's not even licensed to teach, but at least he's got the experience that's necessary, so that counts for something. I don't need a license, young Midoriya, All Might firmly countered. I am great enough as it is. You are a toddler with the power to crush mountains, Izuku shot back. Irrelevant, and while it may seem random, this all has a point, All Might said as he looked around to the hopeful faces of the class. You are not always going to know who you will work with or who you will be facing. In some cases, you maybe learn the barest information moments before contact. Some of the students nodded along as they thought about what All Might had told them. And young Midoriya is especially aware of this because he's been ambushed quite a number of times. In those situations, his opponents have all been well aware of his quirk while he did not. All Might smirked down at his protege. Yeah, you made your point. Izuku waved off his teacher, knowing that the older man was right. Excellent. Now that the Debbie Downers, All Might stuck out his tongue at Izuku, are done, let's begin. For the most part, the class spent their time in a tent watching monitors of the other students run around and either try to avoid confrontation with each other, or in the case of Katsuki, yell at his teammate. Take it back, motherfucker! Bakugo roared as he stamped his foot down in front of Ojiro. Why should I? He's a monster that needs to be put down, the tailed martial artist replied. The only reason he's not in jail is because he's so dangerous. He's not in jail because he didn't do anything wrong, Bakugo shouted. He killed all those people. It was a fucking accident. Bakugo grit his teeth and crackled his quirk in his hands. He's the poster child for putting down people with uncontrollable quirk, Ojiro snarled as he slapped his tail on the concrete. All Might was immediately regretting putting the team's audio on speaker, because now one had to listen awkwardly as two students debated killing another one. You come near Deku and I'll destroy you, Bakugo warned. Izuku sighed and stood up from his cheap metal folding chair. Young Midoriya, where do you think you are going? All Might asked as he saw the current topic of debate. If he wants to kill me so bad, I'll come to him, Izuku bluntly said as he stepped out of the tent. All Might stomped his foot on the ground in frustration, causing a small quake that shook the students who were sitting in chairs. Damn that boy and his self-esteem. Sir, Momo raised her hand nervously. Should we stop them? I guess you are right, All Might admitted. Teams A and F, return to the tent, class is over. Mineta wiped his brow as he really didn't want to go in the room with a pissed-off martial artist and a guy whose attitude was more explosive than his quirk. Hey, oh shit. Mineta quickly sprinted away from the building as he saw Izuku walk in the open doorway. Sato, who was watching closely, reared his head back as a thick column of fire belched out of the door and every window on the first floor. God fucking damn it. All Might threw his headset on the ground. Don't use bad language, kids, he quickly said as he stormed out of the tent to go and collect his students. In the upper floors of the building, Ojiro and Bakugo were continuing to argue with one another. The next moment, almost entire room was engulfed in flames, only leaving a small circle for the two boys to stand in. So, I hear you want to take a crack at the uncontrollable murderer, Izuku said as he walked through the wall of flames and scathed. Well, Izuku raised his hands and snuffed out the fire that had consumed every open inch of the building. Here's your chance. I will not move. I will not use my quirk. Take your best shot, Izuku promised as he turned his back to Ojiro. How dare you? Ojiro seethed as he felt as if the killer of his aunt and uncle was mocking him. How dare I? Izuku said in confusion. You are in a position that others would kill for. I don't see what the issue is. You want this? I'm giving it to you. Deku, I swear to God, if you don't leave right now, Bakugo snarled, I'll kill you. No one will do anything, All Might firmly commanded as he entered the room. Young Midoriya, detention, for antagonizing your classmates. Izuku shrugged as he walked out of the room. All Might turned his gaze on the remaining 2 students. Katsuki, while Izuku may be your friend, you have to understand that there are always going to be people who resent him for his past, and you cannot yell them into submission. Bakugo folded his arms and began muttering as didn't like the completely true wisdom that All Might was giving him. Ojiro, unfortunately, I nor anyone can bring back those lost, but I assure you, no one, on this earth, wishes he could more than that young man that just left. All Might sighed. It sounds crazy, but he was 4 years old. Think about that. What was the biggest concern you had when you were 4? Some scary monster in your closet, not finding your favorite toy. I'm not trying to make you feel insignificant, All Might reassured as he could see Ojiro frown. But that young man at 4 years old destroyed so many lives by accident. His biggest nightmare was seeing his parents' charred corpses as they screamed and burned to death in front of him, hearing the agony and flames consume the city around him. Ojiro's frown fell as he tried to wrap his head around that fact. Having that then shoved in your face at a farce of a trial, having the media follow and publish every detail, for the entire country to know who you were. All Might said, no child is equipped to handle all of that. All Might, Ojiro tried to interrupt. I'm not done. All Might raised his hand. We pro heroes had to drastically increase patrols in the area around where young Midoriya was living, because almost every night someone or some group would attempt to break in and murder him in his sleep. The students in the tent who had patiently waited for their teacher to return as they were too unsure of heading back to the main building with all the tension in the air, were shocked at what they were hearing. Learning the real details of their classmates' tragic history was very different because a lot of this just wasn't told to the public, but hearing it from All Might, hearing him say that people wanted a child dead, was too surreal. I personally caught a few members of the Yakuza who had been hired by suffering families to kill him on his way home from school because they were that angry at him. Young Midoriya was not joking when he said some people would kill to be given an opportunity like that. Are you like those people? Ojiro began to shake as he was utterly incapable of understanding the reality of Izuku's life. But I have to, sir, he stammered out a reply. Take the rest of the day off, young Ojiro, All Might said. It's going to take you some time to grasp this. Izuku re-entered the tent to see the varied reactions on his classmates' faces. So, he said awkwardly. Momo flung herself from her chair and tightly hugged Izuku, the added mass sending him toppling to the ground. Oh my God, it's so much worse than what I found on the internet. Izuku, no one should have gone through something like that. It wasn't that bad. I'm still alive, aren't I? Izuku sighed as he tried to push Momo off of him, but she was not letting go of him. Putting his head back on the ground, he grunted in annoyance. Ms. Yaoyorozu, I'm okay. You don't need to feel bad every time you think you did something wrong. I'm made of sterner stuff than that. So manly. He shrugs off assassination like it's nothing, Kirishima said in awe. I don't think that's a good thing, dude, Zero chuckled. Bakugo returned to the tent and spared Izuku one glance before returning to his seat. Not even going to help me? Izuku questioned. Hey, we can't all have your luck, so don't be ungrateful. Katsuki smirked as he saw his friend's face turn red from frustration and embarrassment. Seriously, All Might's going to be back any minute in Hill. Izuku stopped his plea when he heard a familiar clicking. Perfect. Izuku's deadpan expression reflecting his emotions, as he knew All Might was right there snapping dozens of pictures. Just because we are in UA does not mean I will stop. Izuku grunted and squirmed to free himself. Momo, we need to get up now. It's getting weird. Momo looked up as she had gotten quite comfortable on Izuku's very warm body, then saw how the entire class was looking at them. She squealed and jumped up and hurried to the back row to hide her face. I'm not lucky enough that any of your quirks can erase pictures off a phone, am I? Not likely. These auto-upload to the cloud. All Might taunted as he waved his phone inches from Izuku's head. I learned from the last time you melted my phone. So much hate, Izuku stated as he sat up off the ground. So, now what? Class is over. Well, you can all go home if you want, or All Might drew out the or, enticing the kids with the prospect of shenanigans and fun. We can get to know one another a little bit better. I only see you once a week, so it'd be nice to be more than just All Might to you all. Huh, that's actually a good idea, Izuku said in amazement. I have those from time to time. All Might beamed at the hidden compliment. So, who wants to go first? Izuku was actually in surprisingly high spirits at the end of the second day. He had expected more anger and shouting, but got a bit of acceptance from his classmates, if some of that was not so carefully disguised pity, but he would take what he could get. So, what do you think of All Might? Izuku asked as he and Katsuki walked into the Bakugo household. He's all right, Katsuki rubbed his nose, trying to appear cool. But internally he knew the truth. All Might being number one wasn't just because he was the strongest, it was because he was the real deal, a true hero, and it was intimidating. Chapter 6. The classes for the next few days were pretty standard, as Aizawa had scolded Izuku, Katsuki, and Ojiro for their behavior, but didn't punish them as he felt All Might had done enough. The only really exciting event happened at lunch when the alarm had triggered, but no one had been blamed for the incident. But the rumors were that the press had tried to get in. But Izuku was a bit more suspicious of that possibility as he recalled the interaction with the reporters that morning. Please, any comment on how All Might's teaching is going at UA? One reporter asked as they shoved their microphone into a passing student's face. Some of the students, such as Momo and Todoroki, were more equipped to handle reporters than others, having dealt with them from time to time. Some students like Uraraka were completely overwhelmed at the attention. Wait, there he is, a cameraman pointed, and the crowd of reporters turned as a group to see Izuku Midoriya walking up. Mr. Midoriya! The crowd started to shout over each other as they rushed to get a response from the hero in training. Ugh, you guys again. Izuku groaned with a smirk. Hello, Ms. Sai, Izuku said as he shook hands with familiar faces. Because of how widespread the coverage of his and All Might's training was, he recognized some of the people who came to get interviews with him over the year. Look, I will say what I always have. All Might is an amazing hero, while his methods are highly unconventional, Izuku commented to the laughter of the newspersons, as they were aware of how strange the training All Might could give were. There were still people, months later, mimicking the training All Might had put Izuku through. At the very least, litter and trash was almost non-existent throughout the country as people followed the All Might method of training. But they are all backed by his long-time experience and are highly effective. And since UA wants to make the best heroes, then giving All Might and the rest of the staff at UA the freedom to teach their lessons as they see fit is paramount to getting truly amazing results. Wow, Aizawa commented as he sipped a juice box as he watched the morning news alongside his colleagues in the teacher's lounge. That was one of the best responses I've seen in a while. Well, to be fair, the kid is not used to speaking to the press, Midnight said as she dunked a donut into her coffee. Also, he's still a huge dork. Izuku stuck out his tongue just before turning and running into the campus. Uft. Present Mike coughed as he spat out his morning energy drink. Wahaha, oh man. He doubled over and laughed loudly. I'm so glad we accepted him. Ugh, Aizawa groaned as he realized that was his student out on the television. So Izuku hung back as his classmates filed out for the end of the day to have a quick talk with his homeroom teacher. That wasn't a false alarm, was it? Izuku asked as he leaned on his desk. Go home, Midoriya. Aizawa sighed as he didn't want to have this discussion. Come on, if it comes down to it and some villains decide to attack the school, it at least benefits you if everyone who's already combat ready are aware of the possibility. Logical, Aizawa admitted as of the student body. Only Izuku in the third years had any real-world experience fighting villains. Fine, Nizu is worried that someone took some information from the school servers, Aizawa informed the green-haired teen. Now keep it to yourself. We won't know until Power Loader can go over the system to find what was accessed. Fair enough, Izuku grunted. I'll be a bit more careful in the meantime, he offered as he stepped out of the homeroom. Hey, a voice called out from down the hall. Yeah, you. It rang again as Izuku started to walk away. Oh me, he turned and was startled that he recognized a few of the people running towards him. Hey, from the recommendation exam. Izuku snapped his finger. Setsuna smirked. Yeah. Hey, what's up? She greeted. Nothing much, Izuku Midoriya. He introduced himself as he extended his hand to the group. A tall boy with dark brown hair shook his hand vigorously. Inasa Yurashi, huge fan, he proudly said. Really, heh? Don't meet too many of those. Izuku chuckled nervously at the boy's serious nature. Yeah, I wasn't even planning on going to UA when I saw Endeavor and his bitcha daughter show up, but then you walked in and I just knew I had to be here, he continued. Izuku sweated at the insult the random guy just threw at his classmate, but he just nodded as he took the strange compliment. Right, he dragged out his response. And the rest of you? He asked, hoping to get someone normal to talk to. Setsuna Tokeichi. I was the one who you were checking out, she teased as she saw Izuku blush. Ah, you're so cute when you blush. Hard to think you're a total badass when you do that. Well, I guess I'm only like that when fighting villains, Izuku shrugged as he coughed into his fist to distract from his face. As he started to get more acquainted to the other 1B students, he realized that the time was getting away from him and he'd have to hurry if he wanted to get to the station on time, or else he'd miss the train and have to wait for the next one. I got to go. My train leaves soon, he said as he started to back away from the students. Which one do you take? Setsuna asked as the students started to follow. I get on the one to Tokyo, Izuku answered as that was the nearest station to his house. No way. I take the same train. We must have missed each other, Setsuna said as she continued walking next to Izuku. I'm in the Saitama Prefecture, and Reiko can come with, since we're hanging out today, the girl said as she rocketed her arm off to grab a shy girl with limp gray hair covering most of her face. Salutation, Reiko greeted, as she wasn't used to being dragged into groups of people. Hello, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku smiled, causing the girl to blush. As the trio chatted about their days in the school on the train ride, Setsuna got an insidious gleam in her eyes. So Midoriya, do you want to maybe take 2 beautiful girls to get some lunch, a nice little double date? But, where would the other guy come from? He asked as he wondered how they could have a double date without 4 people. Setsuna giggled. Easily, you just double date the both of us, she said huskily as she wrapped her arm around Izuku's. Izuku struggled to stop himself from igniting as he felt the frisky girl press against his body. But before he could try to wiggle himself free, he felt someone appear behind him, shoving Setsuna away roughly. The green-haired girl stumbled into Reiko, pushing them off the main street. Hey, Midoriya, that's... She paused her chastisement as she saw what happened. Blood spilt onto the ground as a long katana impaled itself through Izuku's back, angled downward to the street. Izuku spat blood onto the street when he heard the voice of the attacker behind him. Slowly standing, he turned his body to face the person. Worthy, Stain gasped as he drew a second knife from his belt. Just what I would expect from All Might's pupil, he said with glee. And who? Izuku hissed as he felt the long blade in between his ribs. Are you? I am the one who decides the fate of fakers, those who hold a stolen title, Stain proclaimed. I am the hero killer, Stain, he introduced himself. Great, Izuku groaned as he slowly and carefully prepared himself to fight. And what makes me worthy? All Might, he sees something in you. Stain's dry and cracked lips formed a sadistic grin as he readied his knife to attack. And even when you knew I was there, you chose a possible death over letting the girl get hurt. Sounds like a fan, Izuku grunted as he felt the well-worn and rusted blade scrape his muscles and organs. But for the moment it was preventing his guts from falling onto the ground, so it was something he would have to tolerate. If I kill you, then I can go after All Might next, Stain proclaimed. So prepare yourself, he cried out as he rushed the wounded teen faster than any normal person should be able to move. Shit, Izuku stumbled back to avoid the knife that would have split his throat open. He started to form fire around his hands, prepared to engulf the entire alley in fiery death, when he saw something get flung by Stain's free hand. Ah! Stain waggled his knife in front of Izuku. Don't want the pretty girls to go up in flames, do you? And that accelerant will ensure that if you ignite me, they will burn to a crisp, just like all those people you killed as a kid. Damn it! Izuku swore as he realized that overwhelming force was not an option in this fight. Setsuna, Reiko, you need to get out of here, he shouted to the two girls who had backed away from the combat. Where? Reiko said as she looked around and realized that Stain had chosen the perfect location. After Izuku pushed Setsuna out of the way of the attack, they had been pushed into a dead-end alley. The only way out was if they could get past the hero killer. Izuku quickly glanced to see that the two girls had no way out. In that moment, Stain rushed at Izuku, who had to block the slash and felt the knife dig itself deep into his forearm. In a desperate move to disarm his opponent, he twisted his elbow, snagging it on the bone it almost cut through. The leverage allowed him to wrench the knife from Stain's grip. Impressive, Stain praised as he reached behind himself and flung a few throwing stars at the teen. But I'm carrying more than that, he cackled. None of the participants of the fight noticed that windows were opening on the floors above them and pointing their cell phones at the action. Nor did the killer see that one of the girls didn't have hands or a head anymore. Back at the UA campus, deep in the school as the staff had a meeting to discuss the break-in, suddenly Present Mick's phone beeped. Sorry, he said as he pulled out the device. Thought I turned that off, his words trailing as he read the message. Turn on the news. Present Mike, never one to ignore a text in all caps, did as it requested, and he went to the far end of the room and turned on the television. Oh shit, he exclaimed as he saw what was displayed on the screen. We need to move people, Nizu quickly ordered his staff who were rushing out of the room. And we bring in our senior quirk analyst, the reporter said as footage of Izuku and Stain's fight played in the background. What do you think is happening right now? She asked. Well, it would seem that for some reason Izuku Midoriya is not using his quirk, the analyst responded. As you can see behind him are two other people. He gestured to the live stream that someone was showing. And they seem to be covered in some kind of liquid. He waved his finger around Reiko and Setsuna, who were behind Izuku, dripping with the accelerant that Stain had doused them with. I would suspect that since the hero killer planned to attack the sole hero of Mizutofu, he prepared a way to prevent him from using his quirk freely, the analyst assumed. Interesting. Now we don't want to talk over the action too much, so we'll allow you the audience to see the action, the reporter said as the display window for the live stream took over the rest of the screen with only a running banner beneath it. We need to know where they are, Nizu said as he watched the fight on his phone, using his vast intellect to look for any details that could be used to pinpoint the location of the fight. Mizutofu is a big place, and neither Setsuna nor Reiko get off at his stop, so he either got off with them at a different stop or they got off with him. So we're looking at an area spanning almost 3 cities, Aizawa reasoned. Do we have any heroes in the area we can call for support? Nizu asked. No. If it's Mizutofu, then he's it. They don't call him the sole hero of Mizutofu for no reason after all, Midnight grunted as she found the keys to one of Yue's vehicles that they could use to race through the streets faster than they could run. This is not going well for young Midoriya, Nizu warned as he watched the teen slump over on his screen. Will you put up a decent fight, from all the pain and blood loss, and finally because of my quirk? Stain huffed. This is an excellent measure of my skill before I go after All Might. With him gone, all the fakers will crumble before me, and a true revolution of heroism will return once again to the world, he proselytized. Motherfucker! Bakugo rolled as he slammed his feet into Stain's back. Kakin! Izuku exclaimed in confusion. How did you know where we were? You fucking moron! Bakugo wiped his lip. I knew something was up when I got to your apartment before you. Then lo and behold I find out that you're fighting more villains, he snarled. Not my choice, Izuku pointed out. Fuck you, you glory hog, Bakugo roared as he launched himself at the villain. Die, he shouted as he leveled a blast just outside Stain's striking distance, disorienting the murderer with the explosion. How dare you? Stain snarled in frustration. Do not interfere with my mission, child, he ordered. I dare because I'm better than you, fucker. Bakugo laughed as he rolled low to dodge a swing, ending up behind the madman, allowing him to fire a point-blank blast to the back of Stain's legs, sending him stumbling forward. "You little shit," Stain hissed before he was struck in the back with a trash bag. The villain spun around to slash another, spilling the contents all over himself as he cut through the black plastic. "Hey, loser," Setsuna shouted from above Stain. "Dodge," she screamed as she started hurling the weapons she collected from when Stain was battling Izuku down at him. With the increased benefit of gravity, he was unable to dodge them cleanly and earned himself some nasty cuts from the blades scraping him. Reiko, not wanting to sit back, kept hurtling anything she could lift with her quirk at the villain, so he couldn't get accurate swings off at Bakugo, allowing the angry teen to lay into the villain. Growling, Stain got furious at being stopped from completing his crusade. "I will kill all of you," he slammed his foot down as his voice echoed in the small alley. The harsh declaration, as if it was just a statement of fact, caused the three battling teens to falter as they had never felt that level of killing intent before. "Not if I..." Izuku spat as he stood up slowly from the ground. "Stop you," he said as he knew it was now or never. He had to use his quirk or else the villain would kill his friends. "Kakin, move," Izuku shouted as a pillar of fire erupted from Izuku's body. The blonde, knowing what was going to happen next, hightailed it around the corner so he wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. "What about the innocent girls?" Stain stepped back as he realized that the boy was no longer under the effect of his quirk any longer. "You'll incinerate them if you use your quirk." "Not if I make it so hot that the gas evaporates," Izuku said as he started to spike the temperature incredibly high from the 5 Celsius, increasing it by a factor of 10 times to over 50 Celsius. Suddenly, everyone in the alley felt way overdressed as they started to sweat profusely. The piles of snow, simmering into puddles that hissed as they evaporated rapidly into steam. "I think that'd be enough," Izuku smirked through blood-stained teeth. Stain quickly looked for an exit to the alley and realized that while it boxed in his target, which greatly benefited his ambush tactics, the high walls also funneled him into a tight space, preventing him from quickly escaping. "Burn!" Izuku declared as he unleashed his power on the killer. "I found them," Ken pointed to the distance as he saw the massive pillar of fire erupt from a nearby street. The UA staff rushing down the street had to cover their eyes as a massive gout of flame shot from between 2 buildings, filling the air with the scent of smoke as the ground smoldered and glowed from the heat. After waiting a moment to ensure that Izuku didn't go for an encore performance, they ran around the corner to see Izuku huffed, dripping blood from his wounds, with the sword still stuck through his gut, and Stain standing, while smoke wafted off his charred body. "Fuck!" Ectoplasm swore as the teachers hurried to get Setsuna and Reiko out of the alley. They paused when they heard Stain take a deep gasp, signifying that he was suffering agonal respiration. Present Mike cringed away from the killer. "He's alive, barely," he shivered as he realized that Stain was either in incredible pain or he felt nothing from having most of his nerve endings burned off.
Because
Izuku spat more blood up as he wobbled on his unsteady feet. "I don't kill anymore." These were his last words before he slumped forward unconscious, only being caught quickly by All Might preventing him from hitting the ground in his injured state. Author's notes: I think it's a ballsy move to have Stain attack now, but I did hint that Stain was interested in how All Might showed Izuku attention and felt that it would work out pretty much like this. Some review before I get to deep into stuff. The great Bubba J. I think that comes from him having almost no personality of his own, so he's more malleable and able to be given these types of personality. It's a curse of the background characters with no traits of their own to just get whatever people need to work. Endless Janes, that's something I want to try to get across, that while Izuku is a student, he's not like the others. He's basically already a pro, just unlicensed, so him going to UA is really just a formality about getting him a license. Mrotrax, thanks. I felt it would be important that other people were affected by Izuku's manifestation of his quirk. That Ichako's family who works on construction got a lot of work because he nearly destroyed a city, how heroes and hero families feel about someone like him, that he doesn't just kill faceless people and that never comes up again, that it affected the lives of those around him. So when it comes to relationships, I'm not sure how I want to take it, so I might just leave it open to a decubal for a while and see how Izuku's interactions flow with the other characters. Chapter 7. He's being a drama queen, Bakugo said angrily as he watched over Izuku's sleeping body. He only lost a few pints of blood. He'll be back on his feet in no time. Choosing to downplay the severity of the issue to not admit how worried he is. Mitsuki gently rubbed her son's shoulders, comforting him as she knew this would be a difficult time for him. She'd seen the aftermath of some of Izuku's fights and the scrapes and bruises he got from them, but this was different. Izuku had never been this injured, nor had a fight been that close to him losing before. I hope he burns in hell, Katsuki grumbled as he thought about the man who managed to leave his best friend in that state. I don't think the fires of hell could burn him like Izuku did, Mitsuki sighed. She'd seen the charred body of Stain as they wheeled him into the ICU. Izuku had left the bastard in critical condition, and the doctors needed to stabilize him in the hopes of the heroes getting any kind of information out of the serial killer. However, Mitsuki didn't particularly care if Stain lived or died. She only worried about Izuku. The sound of knocking pulled the family out of their thoughts. Hey, Setsuna said as she stepped into the room, followed by Reiko, who peered at Izuku's resting body. I just wanted to see if he was up, thank him for the yeah. She trailed off as she saw that the young man was hooked up to quite a number of machines. Is he going to be okay? Reiko demurely asked from behind the other girl. Young Midoriya will make a full recovery, All Might said as he stepped into the room, his mountainous form blocking the doorway. He is made of the strongest material in the world, heroism, the #1 hero proudly stated. The room blinked for a moment before snickering at the over-the-topness that was All Might. Thank you, All Might, Mitsuki giggled as she looked back at Izuku with a smile. We needed that. Needed what? He said confused as he didn't understand that they thought he was doing a bit. Nizu hummed as he read the chart. No one seeing him enter the room behind All Might. Well, we will allow him a few days' time to recover, the principal nodded. He should be back to school on Friday. Isn't that too soon? Mitsuki questioned, unsure about Izuku being up and about so soon after such a perilous fight. I'll be fine, Aunt Mitsuki, Izuku groaned as he opened his eyes. I've had worse, he said as he winced sitting up. Oh no, you have not, mister, Mitsuki said as she gently but firmly pushed him back into the bed. You get some rest, she ordered him. Please, she softly added. Fine, Izuku grunted as he lay back in the sheets and closed his eyes. In a bar across the country, two villains who had previously broken into UA earlier that day were watching the evening news. This could complicate matters, Kurojairi commented as he watched the explosion of fire coming from the infamous teen. Yes, if he's not contained, our plan could fall apart, Shigaraki agreed. The boy is known to train with All Might, so if we don't take him out early, he could interfere. Kurojairi, are you capable of dumping him into the flood zone? A voice on the television asked. Anywhere else will allow him too much of a chance to recover, not even broaching the outright disaster of him being deposited in the conflagration zone. Yes, however, sir, Kurojairi nodded. If I focus on ensuring where he goes, I will not have enough control over the rest, and they may end up in more favorable matchups. That is unfortunate but acceptable. Izuku Midoriya has too much power to leave to random chance, the voice responded as the screen flickered off. Shigaraki swirled his drink around before he killed it off. I think we can gather enough people who'd like to get some revenge on the hero child. He chuckled darkly as he walked out of the bar into the night. Izuku sighed as he saw the myriad of looks and glances he received from other riders on the train. They were constantly looking up from their phones and pointing at the bandages on his face and arms. He had seen the news reports all breaking down his fight, the implications of a battle with a known and wanted serial killer, and comments from other pro-heroes. He'd been used to the stares before, but now people seemed to be cheering him on. Hey Midoriya, amazing job stopping that madman, a pair of businessmen said as they gave him a thumbs up. Oh gosh, he's so strong, some younger girls squealed as they ran past him. It feels nice to be appreciated, Izuku hummed to himself as he walked along the campus, thanking people who patted him on the back and nodding at the greetings. Holy shit, he's walking around, Kaminari called out as he saw Izuku step into the one classroom. Dude, that was the manliest thing I have ever seen in my life, Kirishima said as he rushed over to Izuku. Before he could get crowded out by his eager classmates, Izuku raised his hands. Guys, it's not that big of a deal, It's just another villain, and we're all training to do this stuff anyway, he said, trying to downplay his work. Hardly, Jairu rolled her eyes. You've got a track record, and this wasn't just some debut villain. This was the hero killer, she air-quoted. This guy has confirmed kills on some high-ranking pros. I mean, yeah, it was pretty close, Izuku rubbed the back of his head. I got really lucky that Setsuna, Reiko, and Kaken were there to help. Fucker, if we weren't there in the first place, you'd have wasted him in a second flat, Katsuki snarled as he shoved past his friend. Aizawa stepped inside. He and the rest of the staff had been expecting a bit more energy when Midoriya returned and was willing to cut the class some slack. That's a good mentality, Midoriya, Aizawa said as he stepped to the front of the room. There's no use getting a big head about any of this. But your classmates are right. You did good. There are a lot of pros who are feeling a lot more confident and safe knowing that Stain, or Stendhal as he was known when he was acting as a vigilante before he seemed to go off the deep end, is now under lockdown. However, as much as we'd all like to spend the day chatting, we have important announcements to make. Aizawa wrote on the board for the day's lesson. We're having a special hero course lesson based on rescue tactics later today. It will be off campus, so you will likely be back later than normal. Rescue training. Uraraka's eyes lit up at hearing they would be doing some work on her favorite aspect of hero work. Are we going to be working with 13? She inquired eagerly. Yes, along with All Might, Aizawa answered, unaware that All Might would be running late. This lesson is to help you find ways to use your quirks as a means of saving others, rather than fighting villains. Izuku slumped into his seat to be a bit more comfortable, as his abdomen was still wrapped in bandages. He figured that if All Might was leading the class, it wouldn't be too terrible for him to participate. Sitting on the bus as the students chatted happily with each other. So have you a lot of practice with Rescue Midoriya? Tsuyu asked. Izuku shook his head as he was starting to doze off. No, not really. I don't do a lot of rescue or cleaning up. I mostly just do the fighting, he answered as he tried to recall the last time he was called to rescue someone. So we'll be on even ground with you then, Zero mused as he thought about how his quirk might be better suited for rescue than Izuku's fire. We're here, Aizawa called out as the students disembarked the bus. Are you ready, Kurojiiri? If you fail, the entire plan can fall apart, Shigaraki said as he checked with his subordinate to ensure the scheme would work. Yes, I have the coordinates. I will just need to isolate him. So I'll have to see where he is, Kurojiiri nodded. Good, let's move, Shigaraki said as he stepped out of the warp gate and into the complex. I fucking hate this Cleowis, Izuku shouted as he splashed down in the water. Stupid fucking Kaken. Izuku mentally swore at his friend. Had to attack the bad guy right off the bat. Couldn't have just let 13 deal with the situation. He frowned as he started to swim towards the surface, only to see movement around him in the water. Haha, there he is, a shark-headed villain exclaimed. And since he's underwater, he can't use his all-powerful fire. Easy pickings. Say goodbye, hero. The villain cackled as he opened his mouth to take a bite out of Izuku. Goodbye, hero, Tsuyu answered as she planted her feet on the villain's cheek and kicked him aside. Kero, she ribbited as she wrapped her tongue around Izuku and pulled him away from the swarming villains. Oh my gosh! Mineta squirmed on the deck as Tsuyu and Izuku caught their breath. We're all going to die. And the strongest kid in class can't even use his quirk because of all the water. He panicked as the villains circled the boat, menacingly. That is IT. Izuku roared angrily as he stomped towards the side of the deck. I have had it with fucking villains this week, he said as he raised his hands as flames snaked off his body and floated above him, creating an orb. Bigger, 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 he shouted as the orb started to massively increase in size, looking more like a miniature sun. Burn, he declared as he flung the ball into the lake. Cruel Sunday. Everyone in the center of the complex felt the heat and saw the bright shining light coming from the lake, as the villains trembled knowing that Izuku Midoriya was not playing around anymore. The sounds of the aquatic villains screaming in agony as they were flash-boiled in the water were soon drowned out by the hiss of an entire lake's worth of water being turned into steam. The large ship slowly sank into the muck as Tsuyu and Mineta looked over the carnage. Most of the villains were harshly burned by the boiling water, and the steam wasn't helping. But they were alive, if barely. Stepping out of the steaming lake bed that used to be filled with water, Izuku locked eyes with the villains who were battling his teacher. "Leave, now," he ordered, only to watch as many villains scattered to get away from the angry teen. "Well, that is unfortunate," Shigaraki sighed. "Nomu, put down the toy. Break the boy," he commanded, only for the Nomu to be engulfed in flames, letting out a hellish screech as the fire consumed him. Bakugo saw the plume of fire a moment before they hit the ruined zone, giving him enough time to pull Kirishima around a corner to avoid being consumed by the intense heat. "Good news, Izuku's not holding back," he chuckled to Kirishima. "Bad news, Izuku's not holding back." The Nomu's further blackened and charred skin cracked as he stomped forward out of the fire. "Huh, normally they go down after that," Izuku said, surprised that his opponent was still able to move. "That's because of his super regeneration quirk. Even you can't bring him down." Shigaraki barked out a laugh before ducking under a burst of fire from Izuku's palm. "Fine, Kurogiri, plan failed. We're leaving." "Nomu, rampage," he ordered as he stepped into the warp gate. Izuku formed two balls of fire in his hands that he hurled at the charging beast, which seemed to shrug off the burns as it slammed into his chest, sending him rocketing back towards the steps that lead to the entrance. "Holy shit, that thing is fighting Midoriya," Mina called out as she saw Izuku further down the stairs. "Kick its ass," Mina loudly shouted encouragement down to him. As Izuku pulled himself out of the cracks in the ground, he could hear his classmates cheering him on. "No, no, please, don't anyone fucking help me," he hissed in annoyance as he pumped his flames near his feet to boost his speed. Propelling himself towards the Nomu, Izuku ducked low and showered the beast in more fire. However, the Nomu powered through the pain and roughly grabbed Izuku's leg, breaking it. Izuku let out a scream of pain before the Nomu flung him back towards the fountain, where he rolled to a stop next to Aizawa. "Hihei-sensei," Izuku coughed out. "Kind of getting my ass kicked again," Izuku chuckled, as his teacher lay on the ground, unable to move from his own broken bones. "If we get out of this, we're going for drinks," Aizawa laughed lightly, trying to not let what seemed like a losing battle get to him. "Deal," Izuku groaned as he pushed himself up and hissed. "I am going to get so many infections from the lake," he muttered to himself as he tried to slowly hobble back towards the Nomu. Izuku was prepared to gamble it all in one last attack and see what happened, which would have drained him of energy when suddenly the beast was half encased in ice. "Todoroki?" Izuku said in shock as he turned to see one of the other recommendation students arrive. "I had been interrogating the villains I had captured when I saw your impressive display by the lake, so I realized that you might need more help," Shoko coldly said. "Seems I was right." "Yeah, not looking too hot right now," Izuku chuckled at his pun. "Kind of running on empty." "You require more fire, do you not?" she asked, as she realized that even someone like Izuku has limits. "Pretty much. I'm too tired to make my own flames," Izuku said as he was barely able to make enough to light a cigar. Internally, Shoko was struggling. She promised never to use that man's quirk, but Izuku needed the power boost, and she was still going strong. "I'll give you fire," she said as she raised her other hand, keeping her right side ready to freeze more of the Nomu if it moved. Izuku felt a calming warmth as he absorbed Shoko's fire, yet at the same time it was cold. Nonetheless, the Nomu had ripped off half of its body to free itself. "Well, I'm ready. How about you?" Izuku winked at Shoko. "Let's bring this beast down," Shoko said as she encased the monster in another glacier. However, what they didn't realize was that when the fire Izuku shot at the beast connected with the air that was rapidly decreasing in temperature, it reacted and created an explosion that rocked the entire building. "Whoops," Izuku laughed as he lay on the ground again. "Well, now we know not to do that again," Izuku said as he sat up. "Also, that thing is dealt with," he commented as he looked at the crater where the Nomu had been standing, its limbs currently scattered as the main body twitched as it slowly began to regenerate. "I hope," he muttered as he wasn't prepared for another round. Suddenly, he felt a weight on his lower body. It seems that in the explosion, Shoko had been knocked towards him and she was draped over his lap. "Fucker!" Bakugo shouted as he hurried over to his friend. "I cause explosions, not you." He pointed his finger down in his friend's face. "Sorry, Kaken. Also, my leg is broken. Can I get some help? He asked as he looked up with a smarmy grin. Mom is going to be so pissed when she hears about this, Katsuki grumbled as he helped get Shoko off his friend to get him up. I mean, it's not like I planned this, Izuku shrugged as he limped back to the stairs. We are here, the other teachers announced as they arrived on the scene. Yeah, cavalry is here. About damn time, Izuku grumbled. I'm apparently get pretty pissy after being dumped in a lake, he realized as he hobbled over to the exit. As the class rode the bus back, excited that they got to fight real villains, Katsuki coughed loudly. I'm sorry, he said. What did you say? Jairu questioned as she had heard him. I said I was sorry. I shouldn't have jumped in. If I didn't, then 13 would have sucked up that warp guy, and we all would have been fine. Katsuki sighed as he realized he had made the situation worse by acting rashly. It could have been worse, Izuku shrugged as he lay in the back of the bus. Wow, Momo, these painkillers you made are amazing, he said deliriously as he closed his eyes and rested. Just don't take too many of them, she advised as she continued to make more bandages for her classmates to cover up their scrapes and bruises. So, Aizawa said as he sat at the front of the bus. You've all seen the real deal. How do you feel about being heroes now? He probed his students for their feelings on their prospective careers. It was scary, Mineta shivered. Uraraka nodded. It was way too close at times. I've been getting my ass kicked a lot, Izuku mumbled from the back. So do any of you want to quit? Aizawa asked.
El no.
The 1A class loudly declared in unison. Good answer, brats, Aizawa smirked, proud of his students for coming out of this stronger than when they came in. Chapter 8. What is going on in this school of yours? Izuku muttered while taking a sip from a bottle. My school? Aizawa scoffed indignantly before downing his own. What makes you think I have any control over what goes on in that madhouse? Izuku turned on his stool to look his homeroom teacher dead in the eye. You are the most stable of any of the teachers there. God help us all. Mike is hopped up on energy drinks the whole time. Midnight gives me bad touch vibes. Your boss might just be doing everything for shits and giggles, and as for All Might, I like the guy. Hell, even with all the crap you give him, you like him. But he's fresh. He's not used to working inside of a school environment. He spent most of his time busting the heads of the worst villains this country's seen because he was the only one who could, and he had teams of people handling the paperwork that would have only held him back from stopping Japan from sinking into the Pacific. And now, Izuku chuckled before motioning for another drink from the bartender who grumbled, but still served the young hero in training. He was only given low alcohol content drinks, but it still rubbed the bartender the wrong way to do this. He's teaching teenagers. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Oh, come off it. He taught you for nearly a year, and you were one of those teenagers. Pfft. That was one-on-one, and I'm a cynical a-hole, barking out laughter. He didn't have to do much, but push me to my physical limits. But now he has to try and work with 20 kids at a time. That's a lot for him to be trying to deal with on his own. So why the hell weren't you there on Tuesday to oversee his first lesson with us to make sure we don't run rushshot over him? Biting his lip and looking away. I wanted a nap, he admitted with a mumbled. You lazy ass, scoffing at the answer. Hey, I figured he had you there to help him so things wouldn't get out of hand. Aizawa argued in defense of his nap time. And how did that turn out? Izuku questioned because things spiraled pretty quickly with the problem that his classmate has with him. Sitting quietly and glaring at his student because he didn't like it when other people were right and he was wrong. Fine. I'll be around for more of All Might's lessons until he figures out his own style. Great. Now we do have a problem, Izuku commented as he finished his drink and pushed off from the bar. How do we explain us being here when we're both supposed to be in Recovery Girl's office? Aizawa downed his drink and stood up with Izuku. We don't. It's just a consequence we'll have to live with. Fantastic, Izuku groaned because he just knew he was going to hear it from his aunt for pulling this stunt. To his surprise, he and Aizawa were able to get back into the nurse's office without much fuss. That should have been his first clue that something was wrong. Because entering the class on Monday, he was subjected to a massive explosion followed by cheers and applause from his fellow students. Welcome back, you dumb idiot, Katsuki bellowed as he roughly patted his friend on the back. Okay. So Aunt Mitsuki told you that me and Aizawa snuck out yesterday. You got me? Izuku smiled at the reception he was getting. Outside of the Bakugas, he wasn't used to people greeting him this way after a big fight. You're damn right she told me. Katsuki slugged Izuku in the arm. If you don't want to get your rest, then clearly you are up for the regular. That right? Izuku rubbed his head and sighed. I'm sorry. It's just that Aizawa and I wanted out for a bit, while everything was still getting investigated by All Might's detective friend. So any news on that? Bakugu asked while moving out of the way so Izuku could come into the classroom. Letting out a yawn, Izuku took his normal seat while Bakugu hung around him for details. Just some asshole villain from All Might's past trying to stir up trouble. It'll probably take a while because his bad guys don't just come and pick a fight on the street like every punk who came at me. Seeing as other students started to come in, Izuku turned to Shomei. Hey, thanks for the help the other day. Not sure I had enough still in me after boiling that lake. Todoroki nodded shortly before taking her seat. After the incident, she reported to her father what had happened, which infuriated him that Izuku Midoriya had been the hero of the day. Her training was more intense than ever after explaining the result of her quirk and his colliding. It only served to make Endeavor angrier because this meant that his own Hellfire quirk wasn't hot enough to have a reaction like that as it had never happened before during training. So all in all, she had a good, if exhausting, weekend. Stepping into the classroom, Aizawa saw that his students were in a jovial mood, which wouldn't do for his tastes, and announcing the sports festival while making it sound far more serious than it was did just the right thing at tempering their spirits. Of course, like every year, the teachers were making bets on the students they thought were going to do the best, and Aizawa felt that he had a few really solid options in his own class to choose from. But it was lunchtime, which meant it was his second nap time of the day. As the 1A class was getting ready to go to lunch, the class was busy talking about why they wanted to be heroes since the discussion on the sports festival brought up that this would be their first impression to the public, for some of them at least. Of course I'm going to be number one. I just need to beat Izuku's ungrateful ass, then knock out All Might, Bakugu proudly proclaimed once he was asked what his goal was. Keep telling yourself that. Izuku rolled his eyes. So Yaoyorozu, what made you want to be a hero? Momo looked up from her lunch a bit frantically. Well, it's not really that heroic. My family is, well, to say they are wealthy is a bit of an understatement. For others listening, and they nodded, because the Yaoyorozu name was everywhere. Most stores carried their products. They held annual company expos on new inventions and were one of the largest companies in Japan. For the sake of it, they might as well have been royalty. When my parents told me that I would need to think about the future of the company, I just realized that everything I was doing in my life was to be prepared to run the business, and maybe I said I wanted to be a hero to have an escape from that, to be able to say I had some excitement before being stuck behind a desk for the rest of my working life. It sounds childish when I say it like that, Momo quietly muttered. I have all this money that I'm just running away from to play a hero, and everyone else has more reasons to be here than me. Ift. Izuku scoffed at Yaoyorozu's negative way of thinking. Yeah, it sounds that way when you boil your life down to one thing. If we all did that, then I'm only here because All Might asked me to. Ida is just keeping up the family tradition, and Kaken has an ego problem. Fuck you, Katsuki shouted before taking a bite of his food. I don't have any problems with my ego. I'm perfectly fine knowing that I'm the best. Deciding that trying to get Katsuki to recognize his own problems would be a waste of time, Izuku decided to focus on someone who could make changes in their life. Anyway, sure you think that's what's happening, but you have so many things in your life that frankly I don't even understand. A massive company's future riding on you, the expectations of control, parents. But all of that doesn't mean a whole lot if you end up hating your own life because you didn't become the best version of yourself. You chose to come to a hero school over anything else you could have picked because deep down, you know that what you ultimately wanted to do was help people. So stop doubting yourself about that, because even if your reason for being here was like Minetta's, and you just wanted to seem cool to pick up chicks, you're still going to be helping people. Momo blinked as Izuku turned back to his meal, and she thought about what he was telling her. I'm going to be a hero, she said to herself. I'm going to be a hero regardless of my past or future. So I just need to focus on that for now. As the school day came to a close, the one at class was leaving to catch their trains when they opened the door to see that there was a mob of students outside trying to get a look in. What are they here for? Mineta asked nervously as this never happened at any of his old schools. What the fuck do you think, retard? Katsuki scoffed. They came to see the competition. No need to be rude. Izuku chastised his friend as his comments were agitating the crowd. So it is true. 1A has the school's first villain student? Monoma taunted at the green-haired student, rolling his eyes because he'd honestly heard a lot worse growing up, but others who had seen Midoriya fight to defend them during the attack on the USJ bristled at the mean comment. Monoma was going to continue when a floating pair of hands grabbed him and tossed him down the hall. I'm so sorry about him, Setsuna quickly apologized as she came up with Reiko, who meekly waved her hands in greeting. We heard about the fight on Friday. Are you all right? Reiko nervously asked because she had seen all the villains on the news being brought out to be arrested after they got patched up at the hospital for the severe burns they received. Yeah, just some fractures, and I got some pills to stave off any infections from the lake water getting in my injuries from stain, Izuku shrugged. But it's villains. What are you going to do? So cool, Inasa said with stars in his eyes. So manly, Tetsu agreed loudly with his best friend in class. It had taken one instance of the two's headstrong nature meeting before they were joined at the hip. He's the manliest student in class, Kirishima proudly stated, sliding in with the other two. Oh God, there's more of them, Jairu shouted in surprise that Kirishima's brand of weirdness wasn't unique. It was possibly infectious too at this rate of growth. Reiko lightly reached out and touched Izuku to get his attention. We never actually got to finish what we were setting out to do last week because of that villain, quietly reminding Izuku that their date had been interrupted before it had even begun. Yeah, I guess we were interrupted. Izuku nodded his head because in all the commotion and his recovery he didn't have a chance to meet up with either girl to talk about what went on because of how crazy the last couple of days had been. Before he could say that he was willing to make another attempt, Momo quickly entered into the conversation. I couldn't help but overhear that you were going to hang out after school. Would I be imposing if I requested to join you? Izuku stalled because he was pretty sure that Setsuna's intentions had not been a friendly hangout and instead had wanted something that would start a relationship, but before he could voice that, another girl stepped up. This time it was Shomei. If you are having a gathering, then I too would like to be invited, she flatly said while looking over the assembled girls. Izuku swung his head around and had expected Setsuna to be opposed to the additional people, but she was just grinning even more devilishly. That's not a problem with me, she chuckled darkly. Come on, hot stuff. Looping an arm through his and starting to drag him through the crowd. Every other student watched in amazement that Izuku Midoriya was leaving school with 4 girls at once. How the hell does he do it? Mineta demanded to know. Nothing he could learn in this school could measure up to what that lesson could teach him. Thankfully, Izuku didn't have a repeat with another villain trying to claim his head in some insane ideological scheme, but in a way he had been wishing a villain would attack because sitting in the middle of a booth at a cafe while the 4 girls were staring at him. At least he knew what to do with a villain. Nervously picking up the menu, Izuku looked around the group. So, what's new with all of you? He used the large piece of laminate to cover the part of his face that was blushing profusely because he was pretty sure that this counted as a date, and as he'd never even been on one with a girl, it was now infinitely more stressful to be on one with 4 girls. Well, since the villain attack last week, our homeroom teacher postponed our trip to the USJ until the repairs are done, which is a bummer, Setsuna grumbled. She wanted to totally see all the damage the 1A students had done to the place. It looked sick. Oh, how are the lessons in 1B? Momo inquired because while she was happy with her spot in 1A, the lessons were far more intense than she had anticipated. Surely 1B could not possibly match what the first week her class had gone through. Reiko raised her hand slightly. Our homeroom teacher will use the footage of what the 1A lessons are like before we do them ourselves. He will point out the mistakes made and dash. It totally blows, Setsuna huffed. Takes all the surprise out of it when we get spoiled on what we're going to do because we watched you guys do it. Mistakes? Shomei questioned because she had been trained to not make mistakes. Reiko slightly nodded. Taking the time to show us what has been done previously is helpful as we avoid pitfalls, such as that short boy tripping over his own quirk. But Setsuna is correct. The lessons are a lot less fun, and we are given harsher criticisms if we do what did not work previously. Izuku lowered the menu because Reiko actually sounded a bit sad about that. I'm sorry he's making this less enjoyable by doing that. It's a good lesson, but I didn't just come to UA to do boring lessons that always maximize my potential. Setsuna leaned on the table. I wanted to have some wacky adventures too, but Kan-sensei is really into a structured lesson plan. Actually, Pushing herself off the table, she looked around, not actually expecting any eavesdroppers, but it never hurt to be careful. Sensei is showing us a lot of footage of you, Midoriya, she admitted to the table. It's true. He wants to make sure all of us are prepared for you in the sports festival because he's worried that you'll outshine his class, and he thinks if one of his students can bring you down, then it'll be like beating Aizawa's class. Reiko confirmed that what Setsuna said was true. Izuku took a moment to absorb that one teacher was essentially training his class to specifically counter him, but ultimately it didn't mean much to him. That's how it goes sometimes, Izuku dismissed with a shrug. That's how it goes? Shomei raised an eyebrow. Midoriya seemed fairly relaxed with the knowledge that more people were learning his fighting style to defeat him. Her father had done the same thing with her training over the years, but she had come to the conclusion that Midoriya was not a predictable fighter and his skill was built from real combat experience while her own was simple spars with her father and other trainers. Yeah, why get all bent out of shape over it? People have been doing that stuff for years. Villains do it for all well-known heroes, so it can happen to any of us. Izuku reminded his classmate that this was not the first time someone would be gunning for him. And if someone does take me down, then that's great, they worked for it. His phone suddenly beeping had him looking at the screen in confusion. Turn around? Looking behind him, almost pressed up to the glass, was Katsuki, who looked like he'd just won a huge cash prize. I'm telling Mom, he taunted as he showed that he had photos of Izuku sitting with the girls. God no, Izuku said before scrambling to get out of the seat. I'll be right back. I just have to go stop that moron. The four girls and some other patrons watched Izuku rush outside and shout at Katsuki, who laughed off the threat before dodging Izuku's lunge. So now that he's not here, why are you two ladies here? Setsuna questioned because she was curious if the girls were just trying to clam jam her by being fourth and fifth wheels, or something else by tagging along. Momo and Shomei's reactions were dramatically different, with the former looking quite flustered that she was being put on the spot, while the other barely even reacted. Momo quickly started to twirl her hair in her hands. That's really personal, but you see Midoriya and I are I'm spying on him for my father, Shomei stated flatly to the shock of the other girls. He has tasked me with keeping him abreast of any developments in Midoriya's training, and to find weaknesses for him to exploit. The other three girls were staring slack-jawed at such an admission of nefarious intent that they didn't even move. But unfortunately, it does not seem that Midoriya possesses those traits, and as such I have decided that my father's goal of capturing Midoriya is flawed, and now I am pursuing my own objective. Our children will be incredible, stating that matter-of-factly. Shaking her head, Setsuna let out a whistle of appreciation. At first, hearing that the girl was just trying to exploit Midoriya made her pretty nettled since Midoriya was so nice. But when that changed to a new goal of siring offspring with him, that was far more than what she expected or was personally ready for at the moment. Turning towards the other girl from the competing class. So what were you going to say? Nervously biting her lip, Momo decided that she should use her vast intellect and calmly and eloquently explain to the others her feelings about Midoriya. Or that's what she wanted to do, but her heart was faster than her brain in this case. It's just that Midoriya was the only one to support me during our recommendation exam. My parents didn't want me to be here, and even more so when they got told of the attack. All the personal tutors have told me for years how I'll take over my parents' company, and that it was the only thing in my future. Pausing to take a big breath, Momo hurriedly continued before she lost her courage. And Midoriya is the first person to not tell me I have to do something. He just asked if I wanted to be a hero and told me to go with what felt right. And he's so incredible and powerful. And even with his past, he's so nice, and I think I really want to ask him out. And when you girls were talking about a date, I was worried that I'd miss my chance. Sucking in more air. So I imposed myself because I'm finally going for the things I want. And I think I want Midoriya, so I'm sorry for intruding, but I don't want to apologize for my feelings. The three girls blinked for a few moments, unsure of what to say about that confession. Suddenly, a hellish screech came from outside as two figures slammed down from the sky, obliterating a table in the open-air portion of the cafe. Slowly, Izuku wobbled to his feet. "You dumb bastard. I told you not to send those." Izuku spat while wiping some blood from his nose. "Your suffering is my amusement," Katsuki wheezed from the pain in his ribs while cackling madly. "My mother will never stop now. Prepare for death." The manager of the establishment was looking through the glass in horror at the destruction caused by two rowdy teens, but a dainty touch drew his attention. "I can pay for the damages, sir," Momo said while extending out a black credit card to the man humbly.